Willpower is not forged in moments of excitement. It is formed in the quiet hours when no one is watching, when the mind decides whether it will lead or follow. Tonight is not about pushing yourself harder. It's about training inner command while the body rests and resistance disappears. Most people believe discipline is a struggle. They imagine force, denial, and constant pressure. But pressure weakens resolve over time. True willpower is calm. It does not shout. It does not argue. It simply directs and expects to be obeyed. During the day, the mind negotiates. It bargains with comfort, reacts to emotion, and postpones decisions. But at night, negotiation fades. The mind becomes receptive, impressionable, and quietly loyal to whatever it accepts as authority. This is the window where discipline is absorbed, not imposed. Think of how many times you promised yourself change, only to feel drained by the effort of keeping it alive. Effort relies on mood. Mood fluctuates. Discipline, once internalized, operates regardless of feeling. The strongest self-control does not feel like control at all. It feels like identity. Identity forms when the mind is calm enough to listen without argument, and calm is not found in strain, it is found in rest. As the body relaxes, the conscious guard lowers. This is not weakness, this is access. Whatever ideas are introduced now move past resistance and settle where habits and decisions originate. Willpower does not need force when direction is clear. Most people exhaust themselves trying to discipline behavior from the private, outside. They fight impulses, suppress urges, and rely on motivation. Motivation fades. Identity does not. Tonight, identity is being shaped quietly. The mind learns through repetition. Not repetition driven by urgency, but repetition delivered with certainty. Calm authority carries more weight than emotional intensity ever could. You do not need to fight distractions tonight. You only need to stop feeding them. When attention is redirected consistently, impulse loses strength naturally. This is how discipline becomes effortless. Notice how the idea of self-control feels different when there is no pressure attached, no timeline, no punishment, just a steady expectation of obedience. Expectation is powerful because it does not negotiate. Most people wake up already compromised, already tired, already bracing against the day. Their willpower was drained before the first decision was made, spent the night rehearsing worry instead of strength. Tonight, rehearsal changes. When the mind is trained to expect steadiness, it stops reacting impulsively. Pauses appear, choices slow down, direction returns. These pauses are the birthplace of willpower. Willpower is not the absence of desire. It is the ability to choose without urgency. Urgency belongs to fear. Discipline belongs to clarity. As these ideas repeat, they are not meant to excite you. Excitement fades. They are meant to settle, to feel familiar enough that the mind accepts them as normal. Normal behaviors repeat themselves automatically. This is why discipline formed in rest lasts longer than discipline forced in effort. It does not feel like restriction. It feels like alignment. Alignment reduces friction. Reduced friction conserves energy. Conserved energy strengthens resolve. Most people waste willpower fighting themselves. When inner conflict ends, willpower multiplies. Conflict ends when the mind agrees on direction. Agreement is what is forming now. While you rest, the subconscious continues working. It organizes priorities, filters impulses, and prepares responses before situations arise. It does this best when the mind is not arguing. This is why people with strong willpower seem calm. Calm is not weakness. Calm is command. Command does not rush. It expects. As the hours pass, certain urges lose their appeal. Certain habits feel unnecessary. This is not deprivation. This is refinement. Refinement is the process of removing what no longer serves direction. Direction simplifies choice. When choices simplify, discipline strengthens. You may notice the urge to analyze fade. Analysis belongs to uncertainty. Certainty does not explain itself. It acts. Tonight, action is being prepared quietly. Willpower built in rest shows itself in small ways first. Less hesitation. Faster recovery after distraction, quicker return to focus. These are signs of control, returning not imposed, but accepted. Most people wait for motivation to feel disciplined. Disciplined people do not wait. They assume compliance. Assumption guides behavior more reliably than intention ever could. This is the difference between wanting control and having it. As repetition continues, the mind stops asking if it will follow through and begins assuming that it will. Assumption becomes identity. Identity governs action without effort. You are not forcing yourself to be strong. You are allowing strength to feel normal. Normal strength does not require applause. This is how leaders, builders, and achievers separate themselves quietly. Their minds obey direction because direction has been practiced without resistance. Practice does not always look like action. Sometimes it looks like rest with intention. Tonight is intentional rest. Rest that teaches the mind how to behave when pressure returns. Pressure does not disappear. But discipline determines how pressure is handled. Handled pressure builds confidence. Confidence reinforces discipline. Discipline stabilizes identity. This loop strengthens with every night of correct instruction. You do not need to control every thought. You only need to introduce order. Order expands naturally once accepted. The mind prefers order. Chaos is exhausting. As calm repetition continues, order becomes familiar. Familiar order becomes default. Default behavior requires no willpower. It simply happens. This is the goal. Most people try to control themselves at the worst possible time when tired, emotional, or rushed. Training done in those states rarely sticks. Training done in rest integrates. Integration is permanent. As the body sinks deeper, the mind becomes less reactive. Reaction belongs to untrained systems. Response belongs to disciplined ones. Response is chosen. Reaction is automatic. Tonight, the automatic is being retrained. You may not remember every word in the morning. That is not the point. Discipline is not built through memory. It is built through pattern. Patterns learned in rest surface naturally in action. When morning comes, you may simply feel steadier. Decisions may feel cleaner. Distractions may lose urgency. These are signs of discipline doing its work. You are not becoming rigid. You are becoming precise. Precision wastes less energy. Less wasted energy means more follow-through. Follow-through builds trust with yourself. Self-trust strengthens willpower more than any external. Reward. This is how discipline compounds quietly. While others rely on mood, you rely on structure. Structure does not argue. Structure holds. As repetition deepens, the mind stops resisting direction. Resistance is expensive. Obedience is efficient. Efficiency feels good to the mind. It prefers it. This preference becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. You are shaping that chain now, not through force, through alignment. The strongest wills are not tense. They are relaxed and certain. Certainty does not rush. It expects cooperation. Cooperation is what the mind offers when it feels guided rather than pushed. Tonight, the guidance is steady. There is nothing to fix, nothing to prove, nothing to monitor. The work is happening below awareness. This is the kind of work that lasts. Let the body rest fully. Let the mind absorb direction without interruption. Discipline is no longer something you try to have. It is something you are becoming. And what you become in rest, you express in action. By morning, the foundation will already be set. Quietly, reliably, permanently, rest here. Discipline is forming while you do. Willpower has been misunderstood because it has been confused with strain. Most men believe strength is proven through effort, through tension, through constant resistance against desire. This belief alone weakens resolve. True willpower is not loud. It does not wrestle. It directs quietly and expects obedience. When a man strains, he reveals uncertainty. Uncertainty invites negotiation. Negotiation invites delay. Delay dissolves authority. This is why effort-based discipline collapses under pressure. Pressure does not test strength. It exposes whether command was ever established. Command begins inside, long before action is required. The strongest wills I have observed did not feel heavy. They felt settled. These men were not forcing themselves to act. Their minds had already decided what obedience looked like. Action merely followed what had been accepted as normal. Normal behavior requires no argument. Most people attempt to discipline themselves at the worst possible moment when tired, emotional, or rushed. In those moments, the mind is already compromised. It seeks comfort, not command. Whatever demands effort in that state will be resisted. Resistance drains willpower faster than temptation ever could. True discipline is formed when the mind is calm enough to accept direction without protest. This is why the quiet hours matter more than moments of excitement. Excitement fades. Calm installs authority. Authority does not need to prove itself. Consider the men history remembers as strong. They were not frantic. They were not impulsive. They did not rush to act to prove resolve. They moved when movement was required, and they waited without agitation when waiting served. Waiting without agitation is a form of strength most men never learn. Andrew Carnegie possessed this quality in abundance. When others reacted, he remained composed. When others panicked, he delayed. This delay was not hesitation, it was command. He had trained his mind to obey direction rather than emotion. Emotion speaks loudly. Command speaks once. Most men are ruled by whatever thought arrives with the most urgency. Urgency is mistaken for importance. Importance demands response. This cycle leaves the mind exhausted and fragmented. Fragmentation weakens willpower. Willpower strengthens when direction is singular. Singular direction removes debate. Debate consumes energy that should be reserved for action. The mind cannot serve two masters at once. When desire and direction compete, desire usually wins, not because it is stronger, but because it feels immediate. Direction must be installed in advance to outweigh impulse. Advance installation is what is happening now. As the body rests, the mind lowers its defenses. It stops arguing, it becomes receptive. Whatever is introduced calmly in this state begins shaping expectation. Expectation governs behavior more reliably than motivation ever could. Motivation comes and goes. Expectation remains. Most people wake each morning undecided. They decide how to feel based on circumstance. This is not strength. This is surrender. The day takes command because the mind never did. Willpower reverses this order. The mind decides first. Circumstance responds later. Decision does not need intensity. It needs finality. Finality feels quiet. A mind that has decided does not argue with itself. It does not plead for discipline. It assumes compliance. Assumption is the deepest form of command. You do not argue with your hand to move. It obeys because command is assumed. This same relationship can exist between intention and action when willpower is internalized. Most men never experience this because they continue negotiating with themselves. Negotiation implies doubt. Doubt weakens authority. Authority weakens willpower. Authority must be settled before pressure arrives. This is why willpower trained in rest outlasts willpower demanded in effort. Others will notice this change before you do. They will say you seem steadier, less reactive, more dependable. These qualities are not practiced consciously. They emerge when inner command replaces impulse. Impulse always announces itself. Command does not. The strongest men I have known rarely spoke of discipline. They lived it. Speech was unnecessary because behavior was consistent. Consistency is the visible sign of willpower. Consistency is not perfection. It is obedience to direction even when emotion fluctuates. Emotion may rise and fall. Direction remains. This separation is crucial. A disciplined mind allows emotion without surrendering to it. It listens without obeying. It observes without reacting. Reaction drains strength. Response preserves it. As these ideas repeat now, they are not meant to excite you. Excitement fades. They are meant to settle, to feel ordinary enough that obedience feels natural. Natural obedience requires no force. Affirm this gently, without urgency. I command myself calmly. Direction guides my actions. I do not negotiate with impulse. Obedience feels natural to me. These are acknowledgments, not challenges. Challenge invites resistance. Resistance weakens resolve. As the night deepens, the mind begins accepting a new posture. Not tension, not strain. Authority. Authority feels like calm certainty. This certainty does not rush to act. It waits until action serves. Waiting does not weaken it. Waiting strengthens it. This is the difference between force and willpower. Force spends energy. Willpower conserves it. Conserved energy strengthens follow-through. Follow-through builds self-trust. Self-trust multiplies willpower. This cycle begins here. You are not forcing yourself to be strong. You are allowing strength to feel normal. Normal strength does not require effort. It requires agreement. Agreement is forming now. Rest here. The foundation of willpower has been laid not through struggle, but through command. And what is accepted calmly in rest will guide you reliably in action. Willpower does not begin with effort. It begins with decision. Where decision is absent, willpower must struggle. Where decision is firm, willpower rests. Most men exhaust themselves because they attempt to act without having decided who they will be when temptation appears. An undecided mind is a divided mind. Division invites negotiation. Negotiation delays action. Delay weakens authority. Authority weakened cannot command obedience. This is the chain that dissolves willpower before it is ever tested. Decision ends the chain. A true decision is not loud. It does not announce itself with emotion. It feels final. Finality removes the need to argue with oneself. When argument ends, strength remains available for action. Many men mistake wishing for deciding. Wishing keeps alternatives alive. Decision closes them. As long as alternatives remain open, the mind continues to bargain. Bargaining drains resolve. This is why men who try to be disciplined often fail under pressure. Trying implies retreat is still possible. Willpower strengthens when retreat is no longer entertained. I have observed that the strongest wills belong to those who decide early and do not revisit the matter. They remove the decision from the heat of the moment and settle it in advance when emotion is quiet and judgment is clear. This is why the night hours matter. At night, the mind is no longer defending comfort or convenience. It listens without protest. Decisions accepted in this state are not easily overturned by impulse. Impulse loses power when it arrives to find the matter already settled. Abraham Lincoln possessed this quality of decision. Once he resolved a course, he did not revisit it emotionally. He adjusted methods when required, but direction remained fixed. This separation preserved his strength through relentless pressure. Most men confuse flexibility with indecision. Flexibility adjusts means indecision reopens ends. Reopening ends invites weakness. Willpower is preserved when direction is fixed, even as method evolves. The mind prefers clarity. Clarity removes internal noise. Noise competes for attention. Attention divided weakens resolve. This is why men with strong willpower often appear calm. Calm is not lack of feeling. Calm is absence of debate. Debate consumes energy. When decision is final, energy is conserved. Conserved energy supports persistence. Persistence does not feel heroic. It feels inevitable. As the body rests now, the mind is in the ideal condition to accept finality without resistance. There is no urgency demanding compromise. No fatigue bargaining for relief. This is where true decisions are absorbed. Absorbed decisions become assumptions. Assumptions guide behavior automatically. This is why decisions made in rest outlast promises made in excitement. Excitement fades. Assumption remains. Most people wake undecided because they fell asleep undecided. They allowed the day to end without resolution. The mind continued negotiating through the night. Negotiation became habit. Tonight, negotiation ends, not through force, but through quiet acceptance. You are not required to decide every detail. You are deciding posture. Posture determines response before thought intervenes. Posture here means this: when impulse appears, obedience follows direction, not desire. This posture does not require constant attention once accepted. It operates automatically. Others will notice this as firmness. They will sense that you no longer waver. They will trust your word more readily, not because you explain yourself, but because your conduct no longer fluctuates. Fluctuation weakens confidence. Confidence strengthens willpower. Affirm this gently now, without urgency. I decide before pressure arrives. My decisions are final. I do not reopen what is settled. Direction commands my actions. These are acknowledgments, not challenges. Acknowledgement removes doubt. Doubt keeps alternatives alive. Alternatives weaken resolve. As repetition continues, the mind grows comfortable with finality. Comfort with finality is rare, but it is the source of great strength. Finality does not feel harsh. It feels freeing. Freedom comes from removing internal debate. Debate was the true source of fatigue. Fatigue weakens willpower more than temptation ever could. By settling decisions in advance, you remove fatigue before action begins. This is why willpower trained in rest expresses itself effortlessly in motion. As the night deepens, allow the mind to rest in the certainty that direction has been chosen. There is nothing to revisit, nothing to justify, nothing to renegotiate. The matter is settled. Rest here. Decision has taken root. And what has been decided calmly will be obeyed reliably when the day demands action. Willpower reaches its full strength only when it no longer feels like something you must summon. When discipline is still experienced as effort, identity has not yet caught up with intention. Effort signals separation. Identity removes the need for force. A man does not struggle to act in harmony with who he believes himself to be. Most failures of willpower occur because behavior is being asked to contradict self-image. The mind resists this contradiction instinctively. Resistance drains strength faster than temptation ever could. When identity changes, resistance disappears. Identity is not formed by isolated acts. It is shaped by repeated assumptions accepted without argument. Whatever the mind grows accustomed to calling me becomes the standard against which behavior aligns. Alignment feels natural. This is why discipline enforced from the outside collapses. It demands obedience from a self-image that has not agreed. Agreement must precede obedience. Agreement forms most easily in rest. During waking hours, the mind is occupied with reaction and defense. At night, those defenses soften. The inner picture of self becomes flexible. Whatever is repeated calmly now begins to reshape that picture. Reshaped identity governs conduct automatically. I observed that men who possessed extraordinary self-control rarely spoke of discipline. They did not experience their conduct as restraint. They experienced it as expression. Their actions matched who they believed themselves to be. Henry Ford did not identify as a man who tried. He identified as a man who persisted. Persistence was not something he practiced daily. It was something he assumed about himself. Assumption guided action without effort. Thomas Edison did not identify with discouragement. Failure never entered his self-image. Because it did not fit, it did not weaken him. Identity filters experience. What fits identity strengthens it. What does not fit loses influence. Most men exhaust themselves trying to control impulses that contradict their self-image. Control is unnecessary when impulse no longer fits who you believe yourself to be. Belief here is not hope, it is familiarity. Familiar identity feels ordinary. Ordinary identity governs behavior effortlessly. As the body rests now, the mind is receptive to new assumptions about self. These assumptions do not need to be dramatic. Drama invites scrutiny. Scrutiny delays acceptance. Acceptance prefers calm. Calm repetition tells the subconscious there is no danger in this identity. Safety allows adoption. Adopted identity directs willpower automatically. Others will sense this shift without explanation. They will notice you no longer argue with yourself aloud. You no longer justify choices. Your conduct appears settled. This settlement is the outward sign of identity taking command. Command does not require force. Force belongs to uncertainty. Uncertainty fades as identity stabilizes. Affirm this gently now, without urgency. I act in harmony with who I am. Discipline is part of my nature. I do not struggle to obey myself. My identity directs my conduct. These acknowledgments do not demand belief. They invite familiarity. Familiarity is what the mind obeys. As repetition continues, the idea of discipline loses its weight. It no longer feels like restraint, it feels like preference. Preference guides behavior without effort. Effort fades where preference leads. This is how willpower multiplies instead of draining. Energy once spent resisting impulse is now conserved and applied to purpose. Purpose strengthens identity further. This cycle compounds quietly. The mind no longer asks, "Will I follow through?" That question belonged to division. Division has closed. Follow through feels expected. Expectation governs action more reliably than intention. As the night deepens, allow the self-image to feel settled rather than questioned. Questioning implies doubt. Doubt interrupts formation. Formation continues best without supervision. The subconscious is capable of shaping identity without assistance. Allow it to continue. Rest now. Willpower is no longer being forced. It is being expressed. And what is expressed from identity remains steady under all conditions. Willpower is often mistaken for refusal, yet its truest form is selection. Between impulse and action there exists a narrow space. In that space, choice is born. Men who lack willpower rush past it. Men who possess it have learned to remain there without strain. Remaining in that space does not require tension. Tension shortens the pause. Calm lengthens it. Calm is not hesitation. Calm is command waiting to be exercised. Impulse speaks with urgency. Urgency attempts to collapse the pause. When the pause disappears, reaction replaces choice. Reaction feels automatic because direction was never allowed to enter. Direction requires time measured in moments, not minutes. Most men believe speed is strength. Speed without direction is surrender. Strength is the ability to wait without discomfort. Discomfort urges reaction. Comfort preserves choice. This is why willpower formed in rest is superior to willpower demanded under pressure. Rest teaches the mind that nothing terrible happens when it does not respond immediately. Safety expands the pause. When the mind feels safe, it does not rush to obey impulse. It observes. Observation slows urgency. Slowed urgency reveals options. Options restore command. I have seen men change their entire conduct by learning to pause before speaking, before deciding, before indulging. This pause did not make them passive. It made them precise. Precision wastes less energy than force. Thomas Edison possessed this mastery of pause. When experiments failed, he did not react with discouragement. He allowed the moment to pass, examined it, and responded deliberately. This habit preserved his strength through repeated trial. Reaction drains willpower. Response preserves it. Response requires a pause. Most men try to strengthen willpower by fighting desire. Fighting increases attention. Attention magnifies desire. The fight becomes the fuel. The pause starves desire by refusing to feed it. Desire weakens when it is not answered immediately. This is not denial. It is delay without anxiety. Anxiety collapses delay. Calm sustains it. As the body rests now, the nervous system stands down. This standing down lengthens the pause naturally. The mind learns that it can wait without discomfort. Waiting without discomfort is discipline. Discipline here does not feel like restriction. It feels like steadiness. Steadiness keeps the pause open. As repetition continues, the mind begins expecting the pause. Expectation changes behavior before impulse even appears. Impulse weakens when it anticipates delay. Anticipated delay dissolves urgency. Others will sense this change as composure. They will notice you no longer react sharply. You listen longer. You choose words carefully. These are not social skills practiced consciously. They are signs of willpower operating quietly. Quiet power is trusted. Trusted power invites cooperation. Affirm this gently now, without urgency. I allow the pause. I choose before I act. Urgency does not command me. Calm preserves my strength. These acknowledgments do not demand action. They prepare response. Preparation is the essence of willpower. As the night deepens, allow the idea of the pause to feel natural, not forced, not watched. Natural. Natural pauses appear automatically. Automatic pauses restore choice. Choice strengthens willpower without effort. The mind now learns that it does not need to respond immediately to feel safe. Safety removes haste. Haste weakens command. Command thrives in calm. Rest here. The pause is being installed quietly, and within that pause, your willpower will always be found. Willpower is not meant to be exercised endlessly. When it is used constantly, it weakens. When it is stored through habit, it multiplies. The disciplined man does not rely on strength in the moment. He relies on patterns decided in advance. Patterns carry yesterday's willpower into today's action. Most men attempt to meet each temptation as a new battle. Each battle drains energy. Energy drained leaves nothing for purpose. Purpose neglected weakens resolve further. This cycle defeats more men than desire ever could. Habit ends the battle before it begins. A habit is simply a decision remembered by the body. When conduct has been rehearsed enough, obedience requires no discussion. The mind follows the path it knows best. Knowing replaces effort. This is why men of great discipline appear consistent without strain. Their willpower was invested once and returned daily with interest. Interest is earned through repetition. I have observed that the strongest characters were built not through heroic acts, but through ordinary conduct repeated faithfully. These men did not rely on feeling strong. They relied on structure. Structure does not negotiate. Structure removes choice from moments where impulse would otherwise rule. Removing choice conserves willpower. Conserved willpower becomes endurance. Endurance outlasts enthusiasm. Henry Ford did not decide each morning whether he would persist. Persistence had become habit. Habit freed his mind for greater decisions. Thomas Edison did not summon resolve daily. His work rhythm carried him forward even when emotion wavered. Rhythm preserved strength. This is the quiet secret behind lasting discipline. Most people waste willpower deciding the same matters repeatedly. Repetition of decision exhausts authority. Habit preserves it. Decide once, repeat daily. As the body rests now, the mind is receptive to installing structure without resistance. Structure feels supportive when accepted in calm. It feels restrictive only when imposed under strain. Nighttime instruction makes structure feel natural. Natural structure is obeyed willingly. As repetition continues, the mind begins associating comfort with order rather than indulgence. This shift is critical. Comfort once fueled weakness. Comfort now supports discipline. Discipline does not require discomfort to function. Others will observe this as consistency. They will say you are dependable, reliable, predictable in the best sense. These traits are the visible results of stored willpower. Stored willpower does not fluctuate with mood. Mood may change. Habit remains. Affirm this gently now, without urgency. My habits carry my strength forward. I do not waste willpower needlessly. Structure supports my direction. Consistency is natural to me. These acknowledgments reinforce investment without forcing action. As the night deepens, allow the idea of habit to feel friendly rather than rigid. Rigidity invites rebellion. Friendliness invites cooperation. Cooperation strengthens structure. Structure frees attention. Freed attention returns to purpose. Purpose strengthens identity. Identity stabilizes discipline. This cycle is now in motion. You no longer need to summon strength repeatedly. You are building systems that act on your behalf. Systems do not tire. As rest continues, the subconscious organizes behavior into patterns that require no supervision. Supervision implies doubt. Doubt is unnecessary here. The work is being done quietly. Rest now. Your willpower is no longer being spent. It is being stored. And what is stored wisely returns stronger with each day. Willpower reaches refinement when emotion no longer dictates direction. Emotion is not an enemy. It is energy. But energy without command becomes chaos. The disciplined mind does not suppress feeling. It governs it. Governance is not denial. It is placement. Most men believe strong feeling must be acted upon immediately. This belief alone weakens resolve. Feeling speaks loudly, but it does not carry authority. Authority belongs to direction, accepted in advance. When feeling arrives to find direction already settled, it loses urgency. Urgency is the true danger. Emotion becomes destructive only when it is mistaken for instruction. Instruction must come from decision, not sensation. Sensation fluctuates. Decision remains. This separation is the hallmark of strong willpower. I have observed that men who endure pressure without collapse are not unemotional. They feel deeply. What distinguishes them is that feeling does not overthrow command. Command stands firm while emotion passes. Theodore Roosevelt demonstrated this mastery under extreme strain. He did not deny fear or excitement. He acted from settled purpose regardless of inner turbulence. This steadiness preserved his strength where others fractured. Fracture occurs when emotion and direction collide. Collision drains energy. Energy conserved strengthens endurance. As the body rests now, the emotional centers of the mind soften. Reactivity decreases. This creates space for instruction to settle without interference. The mind learns that it can feel without surrendering control. This lesson is essential. A mind that fears emotion rushes to act. A mind that trusts command allows emotion to move through without reaction. Reaction feeds emotion. Response governs it. Response requires pause. Pause has already been installed. As repetition continues, the mind associates calm with safety rather than urgency. Safety removes the need to act impulsively. Impulse weakens when it is no longer required for relief. Relief comes from steadiness, not indulgence. Others will notice this as composure under strain. They will say you remain even when circumstances press. They may not know why they trust your judgment more readily. Trust grows where emotion no longer rules. Emotion-led action feels unpredictable. Direction-led action feels reliable. Affirm this gently now, without urgency. I feel without surrendering command. Emotion does not dictate my actions. Direction remains steady within me. Calm governs my strength. These acknowledgments do not silence feeling. They assign it its proper place. As the night deepens, allow emotion to arise without commentary. Commentary fuels reaction. Silence allows passage. Passage dissolves intensity. Intensity weakens when it is not fed. This does not diminish vitality. It refines it. Refined energy serves purpose more effectively than raw impulse ever could. Purpose thrives on steadiness. Steadiness preserves willpower. As the subconscious continues working, emotional responses are reorganized automatically. Certain triggers lose force. Certain reactions soften. This is not suppression. It is mastery taking hold. Mastery does not announce itself. It remains. Rest now. Your willpower is no longer threatened by emotion. It is strengthened by understanding it. Willpower weakens wherever the mind is. Divided. Division creates friction. Friction consumes strength before action ever begins. Most men do not fail from lack of resolve. They fail because their minds argue with themselves until strength is spent. Argument is the true enemy of discipline. Where direction is clear, argument ends. Where argument ends, willpower remains intact. The mind cannot move forward and backward at the same time. It must choose. Choice requires clarity. Clarity is not complexity. It is the removal of excess. Excess thoughts crowd direction. Crowded direction weakens authority. This is why men of strong will appear simple in their conduct. They are not burdened by constant reconsideration. Reconsideration drains resolve. Simplicity preserves it. Most inner conflict comes from entertaining too many ends at once. When the mind chases many aims, it commits fully to none. Half commitment produces half strength. Strength returns when direction narrows. Narrow direction does not feel limiting. It feels relieving. Relief signals the end of inner struggle. As the body rests now, the mind releases unnecessary options. Options kept alive out of fear create hesitation. Hesitation weakens willpower. Letting go of excess restores command. Men who lead effectively are not indecisive. They do not weigh every possibility endlessly. They decide what matters and ignore what does not. Ignoring is as important as choosing. Ignoring preserves strength. Others sense this immediately. They feel certainty in your presence. Certainty invites trust. Trust strengthens influence. Influence is willpower extended beyond oneself. Influence without strain comes only from inner agreement. As repetition continues, the mind grows comfortable with fewer internal voices. Silence replaces argument. Silence does not mean emptiness. It means order. Order supports discipline. Discipline thrives in ordered minds. Affirm this gently now, without urgency. I release inner argument. My direction is clear. What matters receives my strength. Clarity preserves my willpower. These acknowledgments do not force clarity. They allow it. As the night deepens, notice how resistance fades when the mind stops debating itself. Debate required energy. Energy is now conserved. Conserved energy strengthens follow-through. Follow-through reinforces clarity. This cycle stabilizes naturally. The mind no longer feels pulled in opposing directions. It moves forward without strain. Movement without strain is the mark of real discipline. Discipline is not tension. It is alignment. Alignment removes resistance. Resistance once disguised itself as effort. Effort is no longer required. Rest now. Inner conflict is dissolving, and where conflict ends, willpower stands firm without force. Willpower, once established, no longer announces itself. It becomes background authority. The mind stops asking whether it will obey direction and begins assuming that it will. This assumption removes tension before action ever begins. Action feels lighter because resistance has ended. Most men believe strength must be felt to be real. They search for intensity as proof of resolve. But intensity is unstable. True willpower is steady. It does not rise and fall with emotion. It remains. Remaining is the mark of mastery. As discipline integrates, effort recedes from awareness. The mind no longer prepares itself for struggle. Preparation implied doubt. Doubt weakened command. Command is now expected. Expectation governs behavior automatically. You may notice that decisions require less thought. Thought was once used to manage conflict. Conflict has faded. Without conflict, thought becomes efficient rather than exhausting. Efficiency strengthens endurance. Endurance allows consistency. Consistency builds reputation. Others will describe you differently now. They may say you are grounded, dependable, or composed. These words reflect what they feel in your presence. Steadiness without force. Force creates resistance in others. Steadiness invites cooperation. This is why disciplined men often lead without command. Their conduct sets direction without explanation. Explanation is unnecessary where authority is felt. Authority here is internal first. Internal authority expresses outwardly without intention. As the night deepens, the mind becomes comfortable with this new normal. Normal does not require attention. Normal behavior repeats itself naturally. This is why the strongest willpower feels ordinary. Ordinary strength endures. You are no longer proving resolve to yourself. Proof belongs to uncertainty. Certainty does not seek evidence. It moves. Movement, guided by certainty, conserves energy. Conserved energy compounds into lasting results. Affirm this gently now without urgency. My strength feels natural. I act without strain. Discipline guides me quietly. Consistency is my normal state. These acknowledgments reinforce recognition without reintroducing effort. As repetition continues, the mind stops monitoring itself. Monitoring implied fear of failure. Fear is unnecessary here. Trust has replaced it. Trust allows behavior to unfold without interference. Interference once interrupted willpower. It is no longer present. The subconscious now carries direction without assistance. Assistance implied doubt. Doubt has no footing. As the body rests, allow this integration to continue without observation. Observation awakens effort. Effort is no longer required. Rest now. Willpower is no longer something you summon. It is something that carries you forward naturally. There comes a stage when willpower no longer requires attention to remain intact. Attention once served a purpose when strength was uncertain. Uncertainty demanded supervision. Supervision drained energy. That stage has passed. Willpower now holds itself. Most men weaken their resolve by watching it too closely. They test themselves. They wait for failure. This waiting invites doubt. Doubt reopens negotiation. Negotiation dissolves authority. Authority is no longer questioned here. When discipline becomes identity, it does not fluctuate with circumstance. Pressure may rise, but direction does not shift. This steadiness is not stubbornness. It is settled command. Settled command endures. You may notice that even when fatigue appears, behavior does not collapse. Fatigue once signaled retreat. Now it signals rest without surrender. Rest restores strength instead of replacing it with indulgence. This distinction is crucial. Most failures of willpower occur not in moments of desire, but in moments of exhaustion. Exhaustion weakens vigilance. But vigilance is no longer required. Habit carries strength forward. This is why permanence feels quiet. Nothing dramatic announces it. There is no need to reaffirm direction constantly. Direction has become default. Default behavior does not argue. Others sense this as reliability under stress. They see that pressure does not change you. Circumstance does not sway you. This consistency builds trust effortlessly. Trust follows permanence. Affirm this gently now, without urgency. My willpower remains steady. I do not fear pressure. Direction holds without effort. Consistency protects my strength. These acknowledgments confirm stability without reviving effort. As the night deepens, the subconscious continues maintaining order automatically. Maintenance does not require awareness when alignment exists. Alignment is now established. You do not need to guard against failure. Guarding implies expectation of collapse. Collapse is no longer expected. Expectation governs response. Response now reflects confidence rather than caution. This confidence is not emotion. It is structure. Structure holds when feeling wavers. Feeling may rise and fall. Structure remains. This is the final form of willpower, not force, not tension, but reliability. Reliability is strength that does not announce itself. As rest continues, allow the idea of permanence to feel normal. Normal permanence does not need reinforcement. It remains because nothing opposes it. Opposition has ended. Rest now. Willpower no longer needs your attention. It has become part of who you are. There is a final stage in the strengthening of willpower where the mind no longer measures itself. Measurement belonged to uncertainty. Strength that is secure does not check itself. It moves, rests, and resumes without question. You are resting within that stage now. Willpower has ceased to feel like something you apply. It has become the manner in which you meet life. Decisions arise without delay. Action follows without negotiation. Rest occurs without guilt. This balance is not learned through effort. It emerges when inner command is complete. Complete command feels quiet. The strongest wills are never dramatic. Drama belongs to conflict. Conflict has been resolved. What remains is steadiness that does not seek attention. This steadiness directs conduct naturally. Men who live from this state do not describe themselves as disciplined. They simply live in agreement with their own direction. Agreement removes friction. Friction was the source of fatigue. Fatigue weakens resolve only when friction exists. Without friction, energy flows where purpose requires. This is why the disciplined life feels lighter than the undisciplined one. Undisciplined minds waste strength resisting themselves. Disciplined minds conserve strength by cooperating inwardly. Cooperation multiplies power. Others feel this cooperation without knowing its source. They sense certainty in your presence. They feel that your word carries weight. Weight comes from consistency. Consistency is the visible mark of willpower fully formed. Fully formed willpower does not rush. It does not hesitate. It responds with precision. Precision wastes no motion. Wasted motion once appeared as overthinking, hesitation, or regret. These patterns no longer serve. They have been replaced by directness. Directness is calm confidence in action. This confidence is not emotional. It does not rise and fall with praise or resistance. It remains when the world is uncertain because direction was settled beforehand. Settled direction does not reopen itself. The mind now trusts its own authority. Trust eliminates the need for supervision. Supervision was exhausting because it never ended. That exhaustion has lifted. The lifting feels like relief. Relief is not the absence of responsibility. It is the absence of inner opposition. Responsibility is now carried without strain. You may notice that challenges no longer feel personal. They are simply conditions requiring response. Response replaces reaction when willpower is stable. Reaction once drained strength. Response preserves it. Preserved strength accumulates. Accumulated strength expresses itself as endurance. Endurance sustains effort without collapse. This is why disciplined men outlast those who rely on intensity. Intensity burns quickly. Endurance continues. Others will notice that you no longer explain yourself excessively. Explanation belonged to insecurity. Insecurity has lost relevance. Conduct now speaks clearly enough. Clarity requires no defense. Defense implies threat. Threat is no longer expected. Expectation has shifted permanently. Expectation governs perception. Perception governs response. Response governs outcome. This sequence now operates without conscious involvement. You are no longer preparing yourself for life. You are meeting it from a position already settled. Settled minds are difficult to disturb. Disturbance once entered through doubt. Doubt has been released. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes direct. Direct life wastes no strength on inner struggle. Inner struggle was the true cost. That cost has been removed. The disciplined life does not announce itself with effort. It reveals itself through reliability, calm action, and consistent follow-through. These traits inspire trust without demand. Trust invites opportunity. Opportunity favors those who are prepared before it arrives. Preparation here was not frantic. It was quiet, repeated, and accepted. That preparation is complete enough to function on its own. You do not need to hold this state in place. Holding implies fear of loss. Loss is not expected. Expectation is now aligned with steadiness. Steadiness sustains itself. As rest deepens, awareness no longer focuses on direction. Direction does not need attention to remain. It has been repeated enough to hold. What holds does not need reinforcement. This is the final integration of willpower, not as effort, not as resistance, but as identity. Identity governs habit. Habit governs action. Action shapes destiny. This chain is now intact. Rest here. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be proven. Nothing needs to be repeated deliberately. Willpower has been strengthened at its source. And what is strengthened at the source does not weaken under pressure. There is a point beyond effort where the mind no longer thinks in terms of control. Control implies resistance. Resistance implies something pushing back. When nothing pushes back, control becomes unnecessary. Direction remains, but it no longer feels imposed. You are resting inside that condition now. Most men spend their lives trying to hold themselves together. They grip intention tightly, fearing that if they relax, discipline will slip away. This fear is born from experience with fragile resolve. Fragile resolve must be guarded. True willpower does not. True willpower holds itself. What you have cultivated here is not tension, but structure. Structure does not collapse when attention turns elsewhere. It supports quietly, the way a foundation supports a building long after construction has ended. You are no longer constructing willpower. You are living within it. The mind now trusts its own direction. Trust removes the need for supervision. Supervision was exhausting because it never ended. Every moment required checking, correcting, reaffirming. That labor has ceased. Cessation of labor does not mean inaction. It means action no longer requires internal struggle. Struggle was never proof of strength. Struggle was evidence of division. Division has been resolved. When the mind agrees with itself, effort transforms into flow. Flow is not haste. It is movement without friction. Friction once consumed more energy than action itself. That energy has been reclaimed. Reclaimed energy expresses itself as endurance. Endurance outlasts enthusiasm. This is why men of true discipline appear ordinary on the surface. There is no visible strain, no dramatic effort, yet they persist when others fade. Their strength does not burn brightly and disappear. It continues steadily. Steady continuation shapes destiny more reliably than bursts of intensity ever could. You may notice now that the idea of strengthening willpower feels distant. That idea belonged to a stage of formation. Formation required attention. Integration does not. Integration is silent. Silence here is not emptiness. It is order. Order does not call attention to itself. It simply holds. The mind no longer rehearses resistance. It no longer prepares excuses in advance. Preparation once served doubt. Doubt has lost its place. Without doubt, there is nothing to prepare against. This does not mean the world offers no challenge. It means challenge no longer shakes direction. Direction remains fixed while methods adjust. Adjustment without loss of direction is mastery. Mastery is calm. Calm does not rush to act, yet it does not delay when action is required. It moves at the correct moment, without agitation. Agitation once masqueraded as urgency. Urgency weakened resolve by collapsing choice. Choice has been restored and stabilized. Stabilized choice no longer feels like decision-making. It feels like recognition. You recognize what must be done and do it. Recognition requires no effort. Others sense this immediately. They feel steadiness in your presence. They notice that your word carries weight. Weight does not come from forceful speech. It comes from consistency over time. Consistency builds trust without announcement. Trust invites responsibility. Responsibility is no longer avoided here. Avoidance belonged to inner conflict. Conflict has been resolved. Responsibility feels appropriate. Appropriate burdens strengthen character rather than drain it. You may also notice that rest feels different now. Rest no longer feels like escape. It feels deserved and complete. Complete rest restores strength fully instead of leaving residue of guilt. Guilt once accompanied rest because discipline felt fragile. Fragile discipline could not afford relaxation. Strong discipline can. This is the difference between control and command. Command does not fear rest. command remains. The mind now understands that willpower is not something that must be held tightly. Holding tightly implies fear of loss. Loss is no longer expected. Expectation has changed. Expectation governs behavior more reliably than intention. You now expect yourself to follow through. Expectation removes hesitation. Hesitation was the gateway through which weakness entered. That gateway has closed. This closure did not require force. It required repetition, accepted in calm until resistance dissolved. Resistance dissolves quietly. Quiet change is lasting change. You are no longer correcting yourself internally. Correction implies error. Error implies judgment. Judgment revives old patterns of struggle. Those patterns have lost relevance. Relevance is what gives habits their power. The habits that once weakened resolve no longer feel relevant. They have not been fought. They have been replaced. Replacement does not feel like loss. It feels like relief. Relief is the sign of alignment. Alignment is the natural state of a disciplined mind. This alignment does not make life rigid. It makes it flexible without chaos. Flexibility without chaos is rare because it requires inner stability. Inner stability has been established. The mind no longer needs to be watched. Watching implied mistrust. Mistrust exhausted energy. Trust has replaced it. Trust allows attention to return outward, where it belongs. Attention now serves purpose rather than self-management. Self-management was necessary when direction was uncertain. Uncertainty has ended. You may notice that silence no longer invites overthinking. Overthinking once filled gaps created by indecision. Decision has settled. Settled decisions do not demand repetition. The mind now rests more easily because it is no longer burdened by constant choice. Choice has been simplified. Simplification strengthens willpower more than complexity ever could. Complexity scattered energy. Simplicity concentrates it. Concentrated energy moves things. Movement without strain is effectiveness. Effectiveness builds confidence quietly. Confidence here is not emotion, it is structure. Structure remains when feeling wavers. Feeling may rise and fall. Structure does not. This is why your willpower will endure pressure without collapse. Collapse requires internal contradiction. Contradiction has been resolved. The mind now moves in one direction at a time. One direction preserves strength. Strength no longer needs to be summoned. It is available. Availability is the sign that willpower has become permanent. Permanent willpower does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition. It expresses itself through reliability, composure, and steady action. These qualities inspire trust in others without effort. Trust creates opportunity. Opportunity favors those who are prepared before it arrives. Preparation here was not frantic. It was quiet, repeated, and accepted. That preparation is complete enough to function on its own. You are no longer preparing for life. You are meeting it. Meeting life without inner resistance frees energy for creation rather than defense. Defense belonged to fear. Fear no longer governs instruction. Instruction has been internalized. Internalized instruction becomes character. Character shapes destiny without noise. This shaping does not require vigilance. Vigilance implied fragility. This is not fragile. It has been repeated enough to hold. What holds does not need reinforcement. As rest deepens now, awareness may drift without thought. There is nothing to attend to, nothing to improve, nothing to manage. Management has ended. Living has begun. You do not need to remember these words. Memory belongs to effort. What has been accepted does not rely on recall. Recall is unnecessary when habit governs. Habit now governs, and habit formed at the level of identity does not reverse under pressure. This is the final condition of willpower, not force, not strain, not vigilance, but quiet, reliable command. Rest here. Everything that needed to be installed has been installed. Everything that weakened resolve has lost relevance. What remains will guide you steadily, calmly, and without effort long after this night has passed. Begin by allowing the body to settle where it is. There is no correct posture. There is only support. Let the surface beneath you carry your weight fully. Muscles do not need to hold. They may release without instruction. Release is not collapse. It is cooperation. Allow the breath to move without interference. You do not need to slow it. Slowing happens naturally when the mind stops supervising. Each unforced breath is a signal that effort is no longer required. As the body grows still, allow attention to soften. There is no need to focus sharply. Focus implies effort. Effort is unnecessary here. Awareness may remain open, relaxed, and receptive. Thoughts may appear. Do not follow them. Following gives them authority. Do not push them away. Resistance feeds them. Allow them to pass as background movement, unimportant and uncommanding. Uncommanded thoughts lose strength. Now recognize this moment for what it is. The body is resting. The conscious guard is lowering. The mind is becoming receptive without being weak. This is the condition where inner command is absorbed. Willpower is not built through struggle. It is built through agreement. Agreement begins now. Allow this understanding to settle gently, without emphasis. I do not need to force myself to be strong. Pause. Allow the idea to repeat quietly. Strength is a state of inner agreement. Pause again. Now allow this thought to arise. When my mind agrees with itself, obedience is natural. Do not analyze this. Analysis belongs to effort. Effort is finished. Pause. Now begin forming the condition of inner command, not a goal, not a demand, a condition. Allow the condition of calm authority to be present. Calm authority feels steady, not tense. It does not rush. It does not argue. It expects cooperation. Notice how the body responds. There is no tightening. This is correct. Pause. Now allow this assumption to be accepted gently. I direct myself without urgency. Pause. Now allow this. I do not negotiate with impulse. Do not imagine impulse. Simply allow the idea of non-negotiation to feel ordinary. Ordinary ideas guide behavior most powerfully. Pause. Now allow this understanding to settle. Direction chosen in calm remains steady under pressure. Pause. The mind is not being persuaded, it is being conditioned. Conditioning does not require belief. It requires exposure without resistance. Exposure is happening now. Now allow the idea of decision already made to be present, not a specific decision. A posture. Allow the posture of settled direction to exist. Settled direction feels quiet. Pause. Now accept this calmly. I decide before pressure arrives. Pause. Now allow this. When pressure appears, direction remains. Notice how this does not create tension. Tension would signal conflict. Conflict is absent. Pause. Now allow the idea of the pause to form. The space between feeling and action. Do not try to lengthen it. Simply acknowledge it exists. Pause. Allow this thought to repeat gently. I pause without discomfort. Pause. Now allow this. In the pause, I choose. Choice does not feel dramatic. It feels simple. Pause. As these ideas repeat, the mind begins associating safety with waiting rather than reacting. This association weakens urgency automatically. Urgency dissolves when it is not obeyed. Now allow this understanding. Urgency does not command me. Pause. Now allow this. Calm preserves my strength. Pause. The body may feel heavier now. This is not sleep yet. This is absorption. Absorption is where willpower is installed. Now introduce the idea of habit as stored strength. Allow this to settle gently. My habits carry my willpower forward. Pause. Now allow this. I do not rely on mood to obey direction. Mood fluctuates. Direction remains. Pause. Now accept this calmly. Structure supports my discipline. Structure here does not feel rigid. It feels supportive. Pause. As repetition continues, the subconscious begins arranging conduct into patterns that require no supervision. Supervision implies doubt. Doubt is unnecessary. Now allow this. I do not waste strength deciding the same matter repeatedly. Pause. Now allow this. What is decided is carried forward automatically. Pause. Notice how effort is absent. This is correct. Now allow the idea of emotion to be placed correctly. Allow this calmly. I feel without surrendering command. Pause. Now allow this. Emotion does not dictate my actions. Pause. Now allow this. Direction remains steady within me. Pause. Emotion may rise or fall. The mind learns that it does not need to respond to every feeling to remain safe. Safety is now associated with steadiness. Now allow this. I respond, not react. Pause. Response feels slower. Slower feels safer. Safer preserves choice. Now allow this. Choice strengthens my willpower. Pause. Now allow the idea of clarity to settle. Allow this gently. I release inner argument. Pause. Now allow this. What matters receives my strength. Pause. Now allow this. I ignore what weakens direction. Ignoring does not require force. It requires disinterest. Pause. As the mind simplifies, resistance fades. Resistance was consuming strength. Strength is now conserved. Now allow this. My strength is conserved naturally. Pause. Now introduce the idea of permanence without emphasis. Allow this. My willpower remains steady. Pause. Now allow this. I do not fear pressure. Pause. Now allow this. Direction holds without effort. Pause. Nothing tightens. This is correct. Now allow the idea of trust to form. Allow this calmly. I trust my inner command. Pause. Trust removes the need to watch yourself. Watching implied fear of failure. Fear has loosened. Now allow this. I do not monitor my discipline. Pause. Now allow this. Discipline operates on its own. Pause. At this point, do not add new ideas. Allow repetition to deepen familiarity. Silence may appear between thoughts. Do not fill it. Silence is not empty. It is ordered. Order holds willpower in place. If thought drifts, allow it. Drift does not interrupt conditioning. The subconscious continues working regardless of focus. Now allow the following sequence to repeat slowly, without urgency. I am calm in command. Pause. I act without strain. Pause. I follow through naturally. Pause. My strength is steady. Let these cycle without effort. If sleep arrives, allow it. Sleep deepens conditioning. If you remain awake, rest without adding thought. Do not restart the exercise if you wake later. Restarting implies loss. Loss has not occurred. Instruction remains. Repeat this exercise on multiple nights, not to force willpower, but to confirm familiarity. Familiarity is what makes discipline permanent. Permanent discipline does not require motivation. It does not depend on mood. It does not collapse under pressure. It remains. In the coming days, do not look for dramatic feeling. Look for absence, less hesitation, less inner argument, less urge to negotiate. These absences are the proof. Willpower has completed its work not when you feel strong, but when you no longer need to try. Trying belonged to effort. Effort has finished its role. Rest now. Inner command has been accepted. Strength is being carried forward automatically. And what has been installed in calm rest will guide you steadily, reliably, and without strain in waking life. You don't lose strength in a single day. You lose it gradually, each time doubt is rehearsed, each time fear is allowed the final word before sleep. Tonight is not about becoming someone new. It is about restoring what has quietly been slipping away. Faith is not loud. It does not announce itself with excitement or demand proof before it appears. Faith settles in quietly when the mind stops arguing with tomorrow and starts agreeing with possibility instead. Most people try to build strength while awake, battling the world head-on, exhausting themselves with effort and resistance. But the deepest kind of strength is formed when the mind is calm, when it receives instruction without conflict. As the day fades, the conscious guard lowers. This is when beliefs pass through without interrogation. Whatever is accepted now does not remain a thought. It becomes posture. It becomes tone. It becomes how you meet the world when morning comes. Think of how many nights ended with worry instead of rest. How many times fear was allowed to speak uninterrupted in the quiet. Those moments did more shaping than all the effort made during the day. Faith weakens not because it disappears, but because it is drowned out. It is replaced by repetition of what might go wrong, what hasn't worked yet, what could be lost. The mind listens carefully and obeys. Tonight, that pattern shifts. You are not here to fight doubt. You are here to starve it. Doubt survives on attention. Faith grows on agreement. You do not need to force belief. Forced belief collapses under pressure. Real faith settles gently, without urgency, until it feels familiar and familiar ideas feel true. As your body relaxes, notice how the need to stay alert softens. This is not vulnerability. This is access. The mind becomes receptive when it no longer feels the need to defend. Strength does not come from bracing against life. It comes from knowing quietly that you can meet whatever arrives. This knowing does not shout. It steadies. Faith is the assumption that you are supported, even when outcomes are not yet visible. And assumptions made in rest become expectations carried into action. Most people wake up with yesterday's fears already loaded. They face the day reacting instead of directing. But when faith is impressed upon the mind during sleep, the morning feels different, calmer, grounded, prepared. You don't need certainty about the path. Faith is certainty about yourself, about your ability to persist, adapt, and continue moving forward without panic. This is why a few minutes of proper mental instruction outweigh hours of anxious thought. The mind does not measure time, it measures repetition and emotion. When faith is repeated calmly, without tension, it settles into identity. You stop asking if you can endure. You begin assuming that you will. Notice how strength feels when it is quiet. No rushing, no proving, just steadiness. This is the strength that lasts beyond motivation. Fear asks you to anticipate loss. Faith teaches you to anticipate growth. What you anticipate shapes how you interpret every event that follows. Tonight, you are not rehearsing problems, you are rehearsing resilience. You are training the mind to expect support instead of strain. The subconscious accepts whatever is presented with consistency. It does not argue. It does not analyze. It organizes behavior around what it believes to be true. As these ideas repeat, they lose novelty and gain authority. Authority does not persuade, it commands. And the mind responds accordingly. This is how faith becomes strength, not through emotional peaks, but through quiet nights where the mind is reminded of its capacity. You may not feel dramatic change when you awaken. That is how real strength forms without announcement. But you will notice it in how you respond when challenged. You will pause instead of panic. You will persist instead of retreat. You will trust instead of rush. These are the signs of faith taking root. Faith does not remove obstacles. It removes the inner resistance that makes obstacles overwhelming. And once resistance fades, movement becomes natural. Let the mind rest in this knowing. You are not alone in your efforts. You are not fragile. You are not behind. You are becoming steadier than yesterday. While you sleep, the mind continues to organize itself around this agreement. It prepares you to meet tomorrow with composure instead of fear. This is the quiet power of faith impressed in rest. It does not fade with circumstances. It strengthens you regardless of them. So release the day now. Let the body sink into stillness. The instruction has already begun. When morning comes, you will not need to search for strength. You will move as someone who expects to endure an expectation, once fixed, becomes reality. Rest here. Faith is doing its work. Faith is not lost in a single moment. It slips away quietly, unnoticed, through repetition of doubt accepted without correction. Each time fear is given the final word before sleep, strength weakens slightly, not because strength has vanished, but because it has been denied its voice. The mind does not measure belief by intensity. It measures belief by frequency. What is repeated most often becomes dominant, regardless of whether it is true. This is why a man may believe in his potential during the day, yet awaken weaker each morning. Night has been instructing the mind differently. I have observed that faith does not require effort to exist. It requires agreement. When the mind stops arguing with possibility, faith settles naturally. Argument exhausts strength. Agreement restores it. Most men imagine faith as something they must summon during trial. In truth, faith must be installed before trial appears. Once difficulty arrives, the mind responds according to what it has already accepted. Acceptance precedes reaction. Reaction reveals belief. Belief determines strength. Each night, as the body rests, the conscious guard relaxes. This guard, so active during the day, prevents ideas from entering without examination. At night, it loosens. Whatever is allowed in at this hour sinks deeper than thought spoken in effort. This is why fear whispered at night shapes behavior more than courage shouted by day. Faith is not loud enough to compete with fear when fear is rehearsed repeatedly. Faith grows only when fear is neglected and agreement is restored. You are not here to fight doubt. Fighting feeds it. You are here to withdraw attention from it. What is unattended weakens. What weakens disappears. Strength returns when faith is no longer opposed. I recall a man who endured repeated failure, ridicule, and loss, yet rose steadily because he refused to abandon his inward agreement. He did not appear powerful. He appeared patient. That patience was faith without noise. The world later knew him as Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln did not speak of belief often. He lived as though endurance were expected of him. Expectation prepared his mind for burden rather than collapse. Strength that expects endurance does not panic. Panic is the sound of unprepared belief. As you rest now, the idea being restored is simple. You are capable of enduring what arrives. This is not optimism. It is acknowledgement of inner capacity. Capacity accepted becomes strength expressed. Most men weaken because they expect exhaustion. Expectation instructs the mind to conserve prematurely. Premature conservation appears as hesitation, doubt, and retreat. Faith instructs continuation. Continuation conserves strength rather than wasting it. As repetition continues, the mind is learning to accept endurance as natural. What feels natural does not drain effort. Effort drains only when resistance is present. Resistance is argument. Argument invites doubt. Doubt consumes strength. Agreement restores it. Others sense this agreement instinctively. They trust men who appear inwardly settled. They rely on their steadiness. They offer responsibility more readily. Responsibility accepted strengthens faith further. Faith grows through use. Use follows acceptance. I have observed that men who regain strength do not feel excited. They feel calm. Calm signals that inner conflict has ended. Where conflict ends, power returns. Power does not shout. It steadies. As the body relaxes, notice how the urge to brace against tomorrow softens. Bracing assumes threat. Faith assumes support. Support may not remove challenge, but it removes panic. Panic weakens judgment. Judgment guides action. Action sustained builds strength. Most men attempt to build strength through resistance. Resistance exhausts. Strength grows through alignment. Alignment allows effort to flow without friction. Faith is alignment between expectation and conduct. As this alignment settles, the mind no longer rehearses loss before sleep. Instead, it allows rest without debate. Debate at night weakens resolve by morning. Resolve does not require reinforcement when faith is present. Others may later remark that you seem steadier than before. This steadiness will not feel new to you. It will feel restored. What was lost was not power, but agreement. Agreement is returning now. You are not being asked to believe anything dramatic. Drama unsettles the mind. You are being asked to allow the idea of strength to feel appropriate. Appropriate strength endures. Unfamiliar strength fades. As repetition continues, the subconscious accepts that you are not fragile. Fragility is a habit of thought, not a fact of being. When fragility is no longer rehearsed, resilience appears naturally. Resilience is faith in motion. I have often said that the subconscious mind is the connecting link between finite thought and infinite power. When faith is restored, that link clears. Strength flows without obstruction. Obstruction was doubt. Doubt has been starved. As sleep deepens, the deeper mind continues this work without supervision. It reinforces calm agreement. It dissolves inner contradiction. It prepares you to meet tomorrow without bracing. You may awaken without remembering these words. That is of no importance. The subconscious remembers tone, rhythm, and assumption. Assumption governs reaction. Reaction reveals strength. This is how faith restores power quietly, without effort, without announcement. Rest now in this agreement. Let faith remain unchallenged. What is unchallenged grows, and strength, once restored, does not easily leave again. Faith weakens not because it is fragile, but because it is often opposed by the same mind that seeks to rely upon it. Men give faith instruction, then quietly revoke it through hesitation, caution, and divided thought. The subconscious obeys the stronger signal, not the more hopeful one. Division drains strength. Strength requires unity. When the mind issues two commands, advance and prepare for retreat, it creates inner friction. Friction consumes power. This is why many men feel tired without physical labor. Their energy is spent resolving inner disagreement rather than moving forward. Faith cannot operate where it is constantly questioned. Questioning invites delay. Delay feeds doubt. Doubt weakens resolve. I have observed that most men do not openly deny faith. They undermine it politely. They say, I believe, but that single word cancels instruction. The subconscious hears the cancellation more clearly than the belief. Faith must be given without conditions. Conditions invite fear. Fear contradicts faith. As you rest now, the mind is learning to issue one instruction only. Not belief followed by caution. Not confidence followed by retreat. One direction. One expectation. Unity restores strength. Strength follows unity, as effect follows cause. I recall the years Thomas Edison endured repeated failure while perfecting his work. He did not entertain divided instruction. He did not prepare for defeat while advancing. He acted as one who expected results, even when results delayed. Expectation preserved his energy. Energy sustained his effort. Effort guided by unity produced success. Men who weaken under pressure often do so because they negotiate with fear. Negotiation gives fear authority. Authority once granted is difficult to revoke. Faith does not negotiate, it proceeds. The subconscious responds immediately when inner negotiation ends. Energy returns. Clarity sharpens. Action simplifies. None of this feels dramatic. It feels orderly. Order is strength. As repetition continues, resistance to faith dissolves without confrontation. Resistance is not attacked, it is replaced. Replacement is permanent. When the mind stops entertaining opposing possibilities, it conserves power. Conserved power becomes endurance. Endurance strengthens faith further. This cycle reinforces itself. Others sense when a man has stopped negotiating with doubt. His words grow fewer. His tone steadies. His presence reassures. They trust his judgment because it is no longer divided. Trust follows unity. Unity attracts responsibility. Responsibility accepted reinforces identity. As sleep deepens, the subconscious is withdrawing permission from doubt. Doubt survives only where it is consulted. Consultation has ended. Fear may still attempt to speak, but it will no longer be asked for advice. Without consultation, fear weakens. You may notice that inner dialogue becomes quieter. Quiet does not mean emptiness. It means agreement has been reached. Agreement ends argument. Argument drains strength. Strength returns when argument ends. I have often said that faith is a state of mind that may be cultivated deliberately. Cultivation does not require force. It requires consistency. Consistency is now being restored. The mind accepts what it hears calmly and repeatedly. Calm repetition carries authority. Authority directs behavior. Behavior sustained becomes habit. Habit governs destiny. As repetition continues, faith becomes the default instruction rather than a temporary mood. Mood fades. Instruction remains. Others may observe that you appear less reactive. Reaction belongs to divided thought. Response belongs to unified direction. Response preserves energy. Energy sustains action. Action guided by faith builds strength quietly. As sleep approaches more fully, allow the idea of inner unity to settle. You are not required to analyze it. Analysis invites division. Acceptance completes instruction. The subconscious understands unity instinctively. Once unity is restored, faith no longer drains strength. It supplies it. Rest now in this single direction. Let divided instruction dissolve. What remains is steadiness, and steadiness is the foundation of enduring strength. No man can rise stronger than the idea he holds of himself. Strength does not fail first in the body. It fails first in self-concept. When a man secretly believes himself fragile, he behaves accordingly, regardless of the faith he speaks aloud. The subconscious obeys identity more faithfully than desire. Identity is the mold into which faith must be poured. When faith does not match self-concept, it leaks away unnoticed. Most men attempt to borrow strength from circumstance. They feel strong when conditions favor them and weak when resistance appears. This dependence reveals a deeper issue. Strength that relies on condition is not strength at all. It is reaction. True strength is expectation of endurance. Expectation settles in identity. I have observed that men who appear unshakable do not speak often of courage. They assume it. Their assumption guides conduct long before fear has a chance to speak. This assumption was not inherited. It was installed through repetition accepted quietly. Repetition shapes identity. Identity governs response. Response reveals strength. As you rest now, the deeper mind is receiving a correction. You are not being asked to become invincible. You are being asked to accept that you are capable of standing without collapse. This acceptance alone restores more strength than effort ever could. Effort strains identity. Acceptance stabilizes it. Many men weaken because they rehearse failure inwardly, even while hoping for success. They imagine themselves overwhelmed, embarrassed, or defeated. These rehearsals impress the subconscious. The subconscious prepares the body and mind to match the picture it has been shown. Pictures repeated become instruction. Instruction becomes behavior. Behavior confirms belief. As repetition continues, new images are forming quietly. Not images of triumph, but images of steadiness. Steadiness endures longer than excitement. Excitement fades. Steadiness remains. I recall a young man who accepted responsibility beyond his position and carried it calmly, without complaint. Others assumed he was suited for leadership because he behaved as though pressure were normal. That man was Charles M. Schwab. Long before the world knew his name, Schwab's strength was not noise, it was composure. Composure reveals identity. Identity attracts responsibility. Responsibility strengthens faith. As you rest, the idea settling now is simple and sufficient. You are the kind of person who endures. Endurance does not require proof. It requires agreement. Agreement installs identity. Identity governs reaction. When difficulty appears, the mind will respond according to identity, not intention. This is why effort fails when identity is weak. Effort cannot override self-concept for long. Self-concept must be corrected at rest. Rest is the hour of correction. Others will sense this shift gradually. They will feel less need to reassure you. They will trust your stability. Stability invites confidence from others. Confidence offered strengthens resolve. Resolve reinforces identity. This cycle deepens quietly. Many men attempt to motivate themselves into strength. Motivation fades. Identity persists. What you accept yourself to be requires no encouragement. Encouragement belongs to doubt. As repetition continues, the subconscious is learning to describe you differently, not as one who hopes to endure, but as one who expects to. Expectation guides posture. Posture influences action. Action sustained builds result. Fear loses authority when identity no longer includes fragility. Fear speaks to those who believe they might break. It grows silent before those who expect to stand. Silence is the end of fear's influence. I have often said that the subconscious mind will translate into physical reality whatever thought is held consistently with emotion. Calm acceptance carries more authority than excited desire. Calm acceptance is occurring now. As sleep deepens, the conscious mind releases its need to supervise. This release allows identity to settle without interference. Interference delays installation. Installation completes now. You may awaken feeling no different. That is the sign of success. Identity shifts do not feel dramatic. They feel familiar. Familiar strength does not call attention to itself. It simply remains. When tomorrow brings challenge, response will feel steadier. You will pause rather than panic. This pause is not hesitation. It is self-trust expressing itself. Self-trust is faith made visible. Faith grounded in identity cannot be shaken easily. It does not rise and fall with mood. It stands. Rest now in this acceptance of who you are becoming. The work is quiet, but it is exact. And strength, once rooted in identity, does not fade with circumstance. Fear does not enter the mind through experience alone. It enters through anticipation. Long before an event arrives, the mind prepares for what it expects. Preparation shapes reaction more powerfully than the event itself. A man is weakened not by what happens, but by what he rehearses in advance. Anticipation is instruction. Instruction becomes posture. Posture governs strength. Most men believe fear is a response to danger. In truth, fear is a rehearsal of imagined loss. The body tightens, judgment narrows, and strength drains before action is required. By the time difficulty appears, the man is already exhausted from preparation. Preparation without cause wastes power. Faith corrects anticipation. I have observed that men who remain strong under pressure do not deny difficulty. They deny catastrophe. They do not imagine collapse. They imagine sequence. Sequence reassures the subconscious. Reassurance preserves strength. The mind endures what it expects to endure. Expectation precedes endurance. As you rest now, the habit of anticipating harm is being corrected. Not by argument, but by replacement. Replacement is the only permanent cure for fear. What replaces fear here is calm expectation of continuity. Continuity dissolves alarm. Alarm feeds fear. Fear drains strength. Most fear is not felt consciously. It is held quietly as tension. The shoulders tighten, breath shortens, thought accelerates. These signals are messages sent from anticipation to the body. The body obeys anticipation faithfully. Correct anticipation restores ease. Ease preserves strength. I recall the story of R.U. Darby, who abandoned his gold mine just 3 feet from fortune. His effort did not fail him. His anticipation did. He expected exhaustion to mean defeat. Another man expected order to reveal itself and consulted knowledge. Wealth followed expectation. Expectation shapes outcome. Fear expects loss. Faith expects sequence. As repetition continues, the mind is learning to expect sequence rather than collapse. Sequence does not require certainty of result. It requires certainty of continuation. Continuation sustains strength. Others sense this shift instinctively. They notice you are less reactive, less startled by uncertainty. This steadiness invites confidence from those around you. Confidence offered multiplies resolve. Resolve strengthens faith. Fear thrives on unanswered questions. What if it fails? What if it ends? What if I am not enough? These questions are never meant to be answered. They are meant to drain strength. Faith does not answer fear's questions. It replaces them with assumption. Assumption ends debate. As sleep deepens, the subconscious is withdrawing energy from these fearful questions. Energy no longer feeds them. Without energy, they fade. Fade does not mean struggle. Fade means neglect. Neglect is occurring now. You may notice that thoughts of tomorrow feel less heavy. Heaviness belongs to anticipation of harm. Lightness signals expectation of manageability. Manageability restores confidence. Confidence steadies action. I have often said that every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Fear blinds men to this truth by insisting on catastrophe. Faith allows benefit to be discovered because it assumes continuity. Discovery strengthens belief. Belief stabilizes identity. Identity sustains strength. As repetition continues, anticipation itself is changing character. It no longer searches for threat. It prepares for response. Response is different from reaction. Reaction is panic. Response is strength. Others will observe that you appear composed even when matters are uncertain. This composure is not indifference. It is preparedness. Prepared men do not exhaust themselves prematurely. As sleep approaches more fully, allow anticipation to rest. You are not required to foresee tomorrow. Foreseeing invites fear. Expecting endurance is sufficient. Endurance accepted becomes real. The subconscious now holds a different picture. Not a picture of victory, but a picture of standing calmly while events unfold. Standing calmly preserves strength. Fear cannot survive where anticipation no longer feeds it. Rest now in this corrected anticipation. The work is quiet, but exact, and strength, once freed from premature fear, returns naturally. Strength that fades overnight was never anchored in expectation. It depended upon mood, circumstance, or effort. True strength renews itself quietly because the mind expects renewal to occur. Expectation instructs the subconscious to restore energy rather than drain it. The body follows the mind's forecast. Forecast determines condition. Most men awaken each day already tired because they expected exhaustion before. Sleep. They carried the weight of yesterday into rest. Rest under burden does not restore. Rest under faith renews. Renewal begins with expectation. I have observed that men who grow stronger with time do not measure themselves daily. Measurement invites judgment. Judgment invites doubt. Doubt interrupts renewal. These men assume improvement and proceed accordingly. Assumption governs recovery. Recovery restores strength. As you rest now, the idea being impressed is simple. Tomorrow will find you steadier than today. This is not prediction. It is instruction. The subconscious responds by arranging energy, attention, and outlook to match the command. Instruction given in rest becomes reality in action. Most weakness is not loss of power. It is failure to renew power. Renewal is blocked when the mind anticipates depletion. Anticipation shapes physiology as faithfully as belief shapes behavior. Faith instructs replenishment. Fear instructs conservation. Conservation under fear feels like weakness. Replenishment under faith feels like strength. I recall the manner of Theodore Roosevelt, whose physical challenges did not weaken him because his mind expected growth through adversity. He did not ask whether he could endure. He assumed it. His body followed that assumption. The mind sets the ceiling. As repetition continues, the mind is learning to expect recovery rather than fatigue. Fatigue rehearsed becomes habit. Recovery rehearsed becomes renewal. Renewal compounds quietly. Others will sense this change. They will notice that you do not speak often of being tired. You do not dwell on strain. Your presence carries steadiness. This steadiness reassures and attracts confidence. Confidence offered reinforces resolve. Resolve renews strength further. Many men attempt to rest by escape. Escape does not restore strength. Escape avoids reality without correcting expectation. Faith restores by teaching the mind that it is supported. Support removes urgency. Urgency drains energy. As sleep deepens, the subconscious is learning to treat rest as restoration rather than pause. Pause without faith preserves fatigue. Restoration removes it. Removal occurs without effort. Effort interferes. I have often said that faith is the state of mind which enables a man to endure temporary defeat without losing confidence. This endurance does not exhaust. It strengthens because it assumes continuation beyond difficulty. Assumption directs recovery. Recovery strengthens identity. Identity sustains power. As repetition continues, the mind releases the habit of carrying yesterday forward. Yesterday no longer instructs today. Today stands on its own foundation. Foundation rooted in faith does not crumble. Others may observe that you seem refreshed by challenge rather than drained. This is not because challenge has changed, but because expectation has. Expectation shapes response. Response determines effect. Effect influences condition. This cycle now works in your favor. Weakness once appeared because renewal was never expected. Strength now appears because renewal is assumed. Assumption does not argue, it commands. As sleep approaches more fully, allow the idea of daily strengthening to settle. There is nothing to force. The law responds to expectation quietly. Tomorrow's strength is already being arranged. The mind has accepted the instruction. Rest now in this renewal. Let the subconscious complete what faith has begun. And strength, once expected, continues to return. Strength that must be renewed through struggle is always at risk. Strength that is preserved through persistence endures, because it does not question its own direction. Persistence is not force. It is loyalty to a decision already made. When loyalty replaces debate, strength is conserved rather than spent. Most men believe persistence is an act of will. Will tires quickly. Persistence continues because it does not argue. The mind that has removed retreat as an option does not waste energy weighing alternatives. It proceeds quietly. Proceeding preserves power. Power sustained becomes strength. I have observed that men weaken most at the moment they reconsider. Reconsideration invites fear. Fear multiplies possibilities of failure. Possibilities drain energy. Energy lost weakens resolve before action even begins. Faith eliminates reconsideration. Elimination restores strength. As you rest now, the subconscious is being instructed that direction has already been chosen. This instruction removes the need for daily recommitment. Recommitment suggests doubt. Loyalty implies certainty. Certainty steadies effort. Steady effort compounds. Most retreat begins inwardly, long before action changes. The mind imagines escape, rest, or relief through withdrawal. Withdrawal feels protective, but it teaches the subconscious that difficulty signals danger. Danger anticipated drains strength. Faith teaches endurance. Endurance preserves power. I recall the long persistence of King Gillette, who carried his idea through years of delay without resentment. He did not dramatize difficulty. He accepted continuation as normal. This acceptance preserved his strength while others exhausted theirs through impatience. Impatience wastes energy. Persistence conserves it. As repetition continues, the idea of continuing without review is becoming familiar. Familiarity removes strain. Strain belongs to indecision. Indecision invites fear. Fear erodes strength. Removal of fear restores it. Others will sense this persistence in you without explanation. They will notice that you do not retreat at the first sign of resistance. They will feel secure placing responsibility in your hands. Responsibility accepted calmly reinforces endurance. Endurance strengthens identity. Identity sustains faith. Many men weaken because they negotiate with themselves. They debate whether effort is still worth it. Debate consumes strength. The strongest men do not debate continuation. They adjust method without questioning direction. Adjustment preserves momentum. Momentum sustains strength. As sleep deepens, the subconscious is withdrawing permission from inner negotiation. Negotiation fed fatigue. Fatigue justified retreat. Retreat weakened confidence. This chain is now broken. You may notice that thoughts of stopping feel less convincing. This is not discipline. It is habit forming. Habit does not argue. Argument belongs to doubt. I have often said that persistence is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. It tempers strength, so it does not break under pressure. This tempering occurs through repetition accepted without protest. Protest wastes energy. Acceptance conserves it. As repetition continues, continuation feels ordinary. Ordinary actions do not drain will. They sustain themselves. Sustained effort builds result. Result reinforces belief. Belief stabilizes identity. This cycle deepens quietly. Others may remark that you appear reliable. Reliability is persistence made visible. Reliable men are entrusted with greater responsibility. Responsibility strengthens endurance further. As sleep approaches more fully, allow the idea of loyalty to direction to settle without inspection. Inspection invites doubt. Doubt reopens negotiation. Negotiation has ended. The mind now proceeds according to decision already made. Decision removes fear. Fear removal restores strength. Rest now in this persistence. Let the deeper mind carry continuation forward without effort. Strength preserved through loyalty does not fade, and what does not fade grows. No man grows strong by standing alone in thought, regardless of how solitary his labor may appear. Strength multiplies through harmony. Where thought is isolated, fear speaks louder. Where thought is shared in purpose, fear loses authority. Harmony steadies the mind in ways effort cannot. Isolation magnifies doubt. Harmony corrects it. I have observed that men who feel weak often carry their burdens silently, believing strength requires secrecy. In truth, secrecy breeds tension. Tension drains power. The mind that refuses counsel carries weight unnecessarily. Weight carried alone exhausts. Weight shared steadies. The principle of the master mind is not merely a business method. It is a law of mental reinforcement. When two or more minds unite in harmony toward a definite purpose, each mind gains strength from the others. Faith shared multiplies itself. Shared conviction steadies belief. Steady belief sustains strength. I recall the method by which Andrew Carnegie assembled men of ability greater than his own in specific fields. He did not fear their knowledge. He welcomed it. Their combined thought produced confidence beyond any one man's capacity. Confidence multiplied by harmony endures. Fear cannot thrive where minds agree. Many men weaken because they insist on self-reliance alone. True self-reliance includes the wisdom to cooperate. Cooperation does not surrender direction. It strengthens it. Direction clarified through harmony conserves energy. Conserved energy builds strength. As you rest now, the subconscious is learning that cooperation is safe. Safety relaxes vigilance. Vigilance drains strength. Relaxation restores it. The mind thrives in support of agreement. Agreement reinforces faith. Faith strengthens identity. Identity sustains power. Others sense harmony instinctively. They trust men who appear supported rather than strained. They offer assistance, information, and opportunity naturally. Opportunity offered multiplies strength further. Strength shared grows. Strength isolated diminishes. I have known men who regained endurance once they ceased trying to carry everything alone. Their calm returned. Their judgment improved. Their faith steadied. Harmony relieved the hidden strain that effort could not remove. Relief restores strength. Strain depletes it. As repetition continues, the habit of isolation weakens. The mind opens to alignment without fear of loss of control. Control maintained through tension is fragile. Control maintained through harmony is stable. Stability preserves power. Fear once insisted that dependence was weakness. Faith reveals that alignment is strength. No great achievement is produced by a single mind operating in silence. Silence breeds doubt. Harmony dispels it. As sleep deepens, the subconscious is withdrawing energy from solitary strain. It is redirecting that energy toward cooperation, counsel, and shared purpose. These conditions reinforce faith naturally. Faith reinforced does not require effort. Others may notice that you appear more at ease in discussion, more receptive, more grounded. This ease invites trust. Trust strengthens cooperation. Cooperation accelerates progress. Progress reinforces belief. Belief steadies identity. As repetition continues, harmony becomes familiar. Familiarity removes fear of exposure. Exposure once felt dangerous. Now it feels supportive. Support preserves endurance. I have often said that the invisible counselors of the mind, those great figures we admire, offer guidance when invited. Even imagined harmony strengthens resolve. The mind responds to alignment, whether physical or mental. Alignment stabilizes thought. Stable thought preserves strength. As sleep approaches more fully, allow the idea of harmony to settle. You are not required to seek assistance. Assistance appears naturally when isolation ends inwardly. End of isolation restores strength. Rest now in this alignment. Let repetition continue quietly. The law of harmonious effort is operating, and strength, once reinforced through harmony, does not fade easily. This exercise is not entered with determination. Determination belongs to effort. This exercise is entered with permission. Permission opens the subconscious. What opens is shaped. What is shaped governs conduct. Nothing must be forced here. The mind responds best when it is not challenged. Begin by allowing the body to remain still. Stillness is not rigidity. It is absence of correction. Correction implies danger. Stillness implies safety. Safety invites the deeper mind forward. Do not search for comfort. Comfort appears once stillness is accepted. Allow breathing to continue without guidance. Breath directed becomes strained. Breath observed becomes even. Even breathing quiets the conscious guard. When the guard quiets, instruction passes freely. Now, without speaking aloud and without haste, introduce the first inward statement. Let it arrive gently, as though already familiar. I am capable of enduring what arrives. Do not repeat it quickly. Allow it to exist. Pause. Do not examine its meaning. Examination invites debate. Acceptance installs habit. Allow several breaths to pass. Now introduce the second statement, calmly. Strength returns to me when I allow it. Pause again. Notice that no effort is required to accept this. Effort would signal doubt. Doubt is unnecessary here. Allow silence. Silence is not absence. It is readiness. Now bring attention gently to the idea of faith, not as belief but as agreement. Say inwardly, I agree with my own capacity. Pause. Then, I no longer argue with tomorrow. Do not correct thoughts that appear. Correction feeds resistance. Allow thoughts to pass like distant sounds. Passing thoughts weaken when unchallenged. Now rest again in silence. The subconscious remains attentive even when the conscious mind wanders. Next, address anticipation, the source of much weakness. Say inwardly, I do not prepare for collapse. Pause. Then, I prepare to respond calmly. These statements do not deny difficulty. They deny panic. Panic weakens. Response strengthens. Allow silence again. Now bring attention to identity without pride or display. Say inwardly, I am steady by nature. Pause. Then, steadiness belongs with me. Identity is formed through repetition, not declaration. These words work because they are calm. Calm carries authority. Now allow a longer pause. If sleep approaches, allow it. If wakefulness remains, allow that also. The exercise continues regardless. Now introduce endurance without struggle. Say inwardly, I continue without strain. Pause. Then, persistence is natural to me. These statements remove negotiation from effort. Negotiation wastes strength. Allow silence again. Now bring attention to harmony, the reinforcement of faith. Say inwardly, I am supported in my purpose. Pause. Then, I do not stand alone in thought. Support, once accepted inwardly, dissolves hidden tension. Tension drains strength. Support restores it. Now rest again. The deeper mind is recording tone, not volume. Next, address fear without naming it directly. Say inwardly, I give no instruction to doubt. Pause. Then, I withdraw attention from fear. Attention is the fuel of fear. Fuel removed, fear weakens. Allow silence again. Now bring attention to renewal. Say inwardly, each period of rest restores me. Pause. Then, I awaken steadier than before. These statements instruct the mind to expect renewal. Expectation directs recovery. Now rest again. If thoughts return to the day, do not resist them. Resistance reopens effort. Allow them to pass without involvement. Involvement gives energy. Non-involvement dissolves influence. Now introduce the final strengthening seal, slowly and with certainty. Say inwardly, one at a time. Faith guides my response. Pause. Strength follows faith. Pause. I trust my ability to endure. Do not repeat these often. Once is sufficient when accepted calmly. Now allow silence to remain. This silence may lengthen. The exercise does not end with a command. It ends with allowance. There is no need to do this correctly. Correctness is not required. Exposure is sufficient. Repetition over nights builds habit. Habit governs behavior. Behavior reveals strength. Return to this exercise on future nights without expectation. Expectation invites measurement. Measurement invites doubt. Let familiarity do the work. Familiarity installs identity. Identity sustains faith. Faith restores strength. Sleep may come. Wakefulness may remain. In both cases, the subconscious continues its work. Nothing further is required. The instruction has been given. The mind knows what to do next. There comes a time when the mind no longer benefits from instruction, but from stillness. Instruction prepares the ground. Stillness allows the seed to take root. When faith has been impressed without conflict, the wisest action is to leave it undisturbed. This is that time. Nothing further is required of you now. No effort must be added. No correction is needed. The mind has accepted a new agreement, and agreement, once reached, governs conduct more faithfully than will. Will tires. Agreement endures. I have observed throughout my life that men lose strength not because life overwhelms them, but because they refuse to trust what has already been settled within. They revisit old doubts, re-examine decisions, and measure themselves against yesterday. In doing so, they reopen doors that had already closed. Closed doors preserve strength. Reopened doors invite struggle. Faith does not grow through inspection. It grows through allowance. What is allowed to remain unchallenged becomes permanent. What is questioned repeatedly weakens, even if it is true. Truth does not require defense. It requires acceptance. From this night forward, your faith no longer needs to be proven. Proof belongs to uncertainty. Certainty rests without explanation. You may find that the mind grows quieter in the days ahead. This quiet is not emptiness. It is order. Order conserves strength. Strength conserved becomes resilience. Resilience reveals itself not in dramatic moments, but in ordinary response. You will notice it when difficulty arises and panic does not. You will notice it when delay appears and patience remains. You will notice it when others rush and you do not. These are not coincidences. They are the signs of faith made habitual. I have known men who searched endlessly for courage, unaware that courage is merely faith allowed to stand alone. Once faith is no longer interrupted by fear, courage appears naturally. It does not announce itself. It acts. Action guided by calm faith preserves energy. Energy preserved strengthens character. Character sustains power. You may notice that you no longer rehearse tomorrow with the same tension. This is not neglect, it is trust. Trust does not abandon preparation. It removes anxiety from it. Preparation without anxiety strengthens rather than exhausts. Anxious preparation drains. Calm preparation restores. From this point onward, strength will not feel like something you summon. It will feel like something you return to. This is the mark of restoration rather than creation. You were never without strength. It was simply obscured by divided thought. Division has ended. Unity has been restored. Others will sense this change even if they cannot name it. They will feel steadiness in your presence. They will trust your judgment. They will feel less need to hurry you or reassure you. This response is automatic. Men respond instinctively to inner order. Inner order invites outer cooperation. Cooperation lightens burden. Lightened burden preserves strength. I have often said that faith is the starting point of all achievement. But faith that must be revived daily has not yet settled. Faith that has settled does not require attention. It governs silently. Silence here is not absence. It is authority. Authority does not argue, it directs. As you rest now, allow silence to complete what repetition began. The subconscious mind does not require reminders once agreement has been accepted. It performs its work faithfully, whether observed or not. Observation is unnecessary. Trust is sufficient. You may sleep deeply or lightly. You may drift in and out of awareness. None of this alters the result. The law continues in all states. Sleep does not create faith. Faith has already been installed. Sleep allows it to operate without interference. Interference belonged to doubt. Doubt no longer holds authority. If, in days to come, an old fear attempts to return, do not confront it. Confrontation grants importance. Allow it to pass without response. What receives no response cannot remain. Fear starves without attention. Faith grows without effort. Strength follows faith naturally. You are not required to feel strong at all times. Strength does not require constant sensation. It reveals itself when needed. Expectation prepares it. Calm preserves it. Preservation is now automatic. I have watched men exhaust themselves by trying to remain vigilant over their own progress. Vigilance suggests fear of loss. Fear of loss weakens the very thing it seeks to protect. Release restores balance. Balance sustains endurance. From this night forward, the responsibility of maintaining strength no longer rests on conscious effort. It rests on habit. Habit has been formed through calm repetition and acceptance. Habit governs behavior. Behavior reveals faith. Faith sustains strength. This cycle now turns without supervision. Allow yourself to rest without. Evaluation. Evaluation invites judgment. Judgment invites comparison. Comparison weakens resolve. Resolve does not need reinforcement. Once faith is present, faith stands. It does not lean. You may find that problems no longer feel personal. They appear as tasks rather than threats. This shift is subtle, yet powerful. Threat drains strength. Task invites response. Response strengthens confidence. Confidence steadies identity. Identity sustains faith. This is the quiet power that endures long after emotion fades. It does not depend on circumstance. It does not fluctuate with opinion. It remains because it has been accepted. Acceptance is the final act of faith. From this point forward, tomorrow does not require your worry. Preparation will occur naturally. Strength will appear when called upon. Endurance will reveal itself without announcement. You are not behind. You are not fragile. You are not unprepared. These were conclusions drawn during seasons of divided thought. They no longer instruct the mind. The mind now responds to a different agreement. That agreement is simple, steady, and sufficient. Rest now in that agreement. Let silence hold what words no longer need to carry. The work is complete. Faith has been restored. Strength will follow it wherever you go. There is a form of strength that does not announce itself and does not require reinforcement. It does not rise in moments of excitement nor disappear in moments of strain. It remains because it has been accepted, not because it has been defended. This is the strength that now governs you. Nothing further must be done. The mind has reached the point where agreement replaces effort. Agreement settles the inner world. A settled inner world responds to life with steadiness rather than reaction. Reaction drains power. Steadiness preserves it. I have observed that men often believe they must remain alert to maintain their strength. They fear that if they relax their attention, weakness will return. This belief itself is weakness. True strength does not depend on vigilance. It depends on order. Order sustains itself. Once order is restored, supervision becomes unnecessary. From this night forward, strength will no longer feel like something you hold tightly. Holding invites tension. Tension exhausts. Strength will feel like something that supports you quietly, without demand. Support does not require effort. It carries. You may notice that the mind grows less interested in reviewing the past. Review belongs to doubt. Doubt searches for explanation. Faith does not need explanation. It rests in assumption. Assumption governs behavior more powerfully than analysis. Behavior guided by assumption conserves energy. Energy conserved deepens endurance. Endurance reveals itself only when needed. I have known men who mistook stillness for weakness because they were accustomed to strain. They did not recognize calm as power. Calm is power in reserve. Reserve is what allows a man to meet pressure without collapse. Collapse occurs only when reserve has been spent in advance. Fear spends reserve prematurely. Faith protects it. As you rest now, reserve is being preserved rather than consumed. The subconscious no longer prepares for collapse. It prepares for response. Response is strength in motion. Motion guided by faith is efficient. Efficiency prevents exhaustion. From this point onward, challenges will no longer feel like threats to your stability. They will feel like events to be met. This distinction is subtle, yet decisive. Threat invites panic. Event invites response. Response strengthens confidence. Confidence steadies identity. Identity sustains faith. Others will sense this stability without understanding its source. They may feel calmer in your presence. They may trust your judgment more readily. They may rely on you without explanation. This is not coincidence. Men respond instinctively to inner order. Inner order has been restored. I have often said that faith is the only known antidote for failure. Faith here does not promise ease. It promises continuity. Continuity allows strength to be renewed rather than consumed. Consumption leads to fatigue. Renewal leads to endurance. From now on, rest will feel deeper, not because the body has changed, but because the mind no longer resists it. Resistance prevents restoration. Acceptance allows it. Acceptance is now the governing condition. You are not required to protect this state. Protection implies fear of loss. Fear of loss invites loss. Proceed instead as one who trusts what has been established. Trust allows the law to operate. Law does not require encouragement. It performs faithfully. You may find that moments which once unsettled you now pass without disturbance. This is not indifference. It is mastery. Mastery does not eliminate difficulty. It eliminates panic. Panic is the enemy of strength. Its influence has ended. If, at any time, the mind grows quiet, allow it. Quiet is not emptiness. It is alignment. Alignment is the highest state of mental efficiency. Efficiency preserves strength. Preserved strength accumulates. Accumulated strength becomes character. Character governs destiny. This is the process now unfolding without effort. I have observed that men who truly possess faith do not speak of it often. Their lives reveal it. Their manner reveals it. Their responses reveal it. Faith, once settled, prefers action to declaration. Action guided by calm faith endures. Endurance outlasts excitement. Excitement fades. Calm remains. As you continue to rest, allow this calm to remain undisturbed. There is no need to return to instruction. Instruction has completed its work. What remains is allowance. Allowance is the final act of faith. From this night forward, you are not required to prove your strength to yourself or to anyone else. Proof belongs to insecurity. Security rests quietly. Quiet security is unshakable. You may awaken with no memory of these words. That is expected. Memory is not the instrument of change. Impression is. Impression has already been made. The subconscious carries it forward. It will guide thought. It will guide reaction. It will guide endurance, and it will do so without asking for attention. This is the condition in which strength lasts beyond circumstance. It is not dramatic. It is dependable. It does not rise and fall. It remains. Remain now in this stillness. Let silence complete what faith has begun. The law is operating, and it will not fail. There is a quiet dignity that comes when the mind no longer argues with its own direction. In that quiet, strength ceases to be something pursued and becomes something relied upon. Reliance is the sign that faith has settled into place and no longer requires defense. This is that quiet. The work of instruction is finished. What remains is allowance. Allowance does not strain, it permits. And what is permitted to remain undisturbed grows into permanence. I have watched many men approach the edge of great inner change only to retreat, not from fear of failure, but from fear of trusting what had already been established. They continued to check, to measure, to question. In doing so, they weakened the very condition they sought to preserve. Strength does not survive inspection. It survives confidence. Confidence here is not display. It is restfulness. It is the absence of inner noise. Noise belongs to conflict. Conflict drains power. Where conflict ends, power returns quietly. You may notice that the mind no longer seeks reassurance in the same way. This is not neglect, it is maturity. The mature mind no longer asks whether it can endure. It assumes endurance as its natural state. Assumption governs reaction. Reaction reveals strength. Faith, once established, prefers silence. Silence allows it to operate without interference. Interference belongs to doubt. Doubt has been dismissed not through argument, but through lack of invitation. What is not invited cannot remain. I have often said that every man must choose between the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Yet beyond discipline lies something even quieter: order. Order removes the need for discipline. It replaces effort with alignment. Alignment is now present. From this night forward, the mind will respond to challenge with steadiness rather than alarm. Alarm once consumed strength before action began. Steadiness conserves energy until it is needed. Energy conserved becomes reserve. Reserve prevents collapse. Collapse occurs only when strength has been spent in advance. Fear spends strength early. Faith preserves. You are not required to prepare yourself emotionally for what may come. Emotional preparation often exhausts more than it protects. Faith prepares without tension. It assumes response will be sufficient when the moment arrives. Sufficiency expected becomes sufficient. Expectation instructs the subconscious faithfully. The subconscious does not concern itself with possibility. It concerns itself with instruction. Instruction has been given calmly and repeatedly. Calm repetition carries authority. Authority does not need reinforcement. Reinforcement belongs to uncertainty. Uncertainty no longer governs here. Others may sense this change without words. They may feel less need to advise you. They may trust your judgment more readily. They may notice that you do not rush to explain yourself. Explanation belongs to insecurity. Security rests without explanation. Resting security invites trust. Trust attracts cooperation. Cooperation lightens burden. Lightened burden preserves strength. I have seen men endure long seasons of difficulty without losing faith because they had learned to separate circumstance from identity. They did not say, "This is who I am." They said, "This is what is happening." This separation preserves dignity and strength. Dignity is faith expressed quietly. As you rest now, identity remains untouched by circumstance. Circumstance may change. Identity remains stable. Stability is the foundation of endurance. Endurance does not exhaust when identity is firm. From this point onward, strength will reveal itself not in how loudly you resist, but in how calmly you continue. Continuation without drama is the truest sign of faith. Drama seeks witnesses. Faith requires none. You may find that time feels less threatening. Time once felt like pressure because doubt questioned outcome. Faith accepts sequence. Sequence removes urgency. Urgency drains strength. Without urgency, the mind rests more deeply. Deep rest restores power. Restoration now occurs naturally. I have often said that faith is the starting point of all achievement. But faith that remains noisy has not yet completed its work. Faith that has settled becomes quiet. Quiet faith governs behavior more effectively than loud belief ever could. Behavior guided by quiet faith endures. Endurance compounds. Compounding produces results that appear effortless to those who do not understand the law. Law works whether understood or not. It requires only alignment. Alignment has been achieved. You are not required to return to these words for reassurance. Reassurance belongs to transition. Transition has passed. What remains is establishment. Establishment does not shift easily. If, in time, an old thought of weakness attempts to return, allow it to pass without resistance. Resistance grants importance. Importance feeds repetition. Repetition installs habit. Habit governs destiny. You are no longer installing weakness. You are allowing strength to remain. Allowance is the most powerful form of faith. It does not push. It does not plead. It trusts. From this night forward, trust will replace effort. Not trust in circumstance, but trust in your own capacity to respond. Response trusted removes fear of anticipation. Anticipation once rehearsed loss. It now rehearses endurance. Endurance rehearsed becomes real. You may awaken with a sense of calm rather than excitement. Calm is the sign that strength has not been disturbed. Excitement rises and falls. Calm remains. Remain now in this calm. Let the mind stay unoccupied. Let silence finish what repetition began. The law is operating. It does not require attention. It does not require belief renewed daily. It proceeds. And it will continue to proceed, quietly strengthening you, long after words have ceased. There is a moment when the mind no longer seeks reassurance, not because it has been convinced, but because it has settled. In that settlement, faith no longer rises and falls. It stands. And what stands quietly requires no defense. This is that condition. You have arrived at a place beyond effort, beyond instruction, beyond the need to persuade yourself of anything. What has been accepted inwardly now governs outwardly. The mind, once divided, has found agreement. Agreement is the end of struggle. Struggle was never strength. Strength is steadiness. I have observed throughout my life that men mistake intensity for power. Intensity burns brightly, then fades. Steadiness endures because it does not consume itself. What does not consume itself remains available when needed. Availability is the mark of true strength. From this night forward, your strength no longer depends upon how you feel in a given moment. Feeling changes. Identity remains. Identity now includes endurance. Endurance does not ask permission. It responds. Response guided by faith conserves energy. Energy conserved accumulates. Accumulated energy becomes reserve. Reserve prevents collapse. Many men collapse not because life overcomes them, but because they spend their strength in advance through worry, anticipation, and inner argument. Argument has ended. Anticipation has been corrected. What remains is readiness without tension. Readiness without tension is mastery. Mastery does not shout, it waits calmly. You may notice that the mind grows less busy. Busyness belonged to uncertainty. Uncertainty demanded constant checking. Certainty releases the need to monitor. Monitoring exhausts. Trust restores. Trust here is not blind. It is informed by experience and repetition. The mind has been shown, calmly and consistently, that it can endure. It now accepts this as fact. Fact does not require reinforcement. It stands on its own. Others may notice that you no longer rush to defend your position. Defense belongs to insecurity. Security rests quietly. Quiet security commands respect without asking for it. Respect offered strengthens resolve. Resolve steadies action. Action sustained builds result. Result reinforces belief. Belief stabilizes identity. This cycle now operates without interruption. I have known men who feared rest because rest exposed their doubts. Doubt spoke loudly in silence. That fear is gone now. Silence no longer threatens. Silence confirms. Confirmation does not speak, it remains. As you rest, the mind is not idle, it is ordered. Order directs thought automatically. Thought ordered properly does not wander toward fear. It returns to center without effort. Centering restores balance. Balance preserves strength. From this point onward, challenges will not feel like tests of worth. They will feel like situations to be met. Worth is no longer in question. When worth is settled, energy is no longer spent defending it. Defense wastes strength. Acceptance preserves it. You may awaken tomorrow without any dramatic sense of change. This is the sign of success. Dramatic shifts belong to unstable foundations. Stable foundations feel familiar. Familiar strength does not announce itself. It simply remains present. I have often said that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. But faith that has matured becomes less about hope and more about knowing. Knowing does not speculate. It expects response when response is required. Expectation directs behavior quietly. Quiet behavior conserves power. Power conserved strengthens character. Character sustains destiny. This is how strength carries. Forward through years rather than moments. From this night forward, you are not required to remember these words. Memory fades. Impression remains. The subconscious carries impression forward without effort. Effort is no longer necessary. If at times you find yourself doing less, yet accomplishing more, do not question it. Questioning invites doubt. Doubt invites division. Division drains strength. Allow effectiveness to remain unexplained. Explanation is unnecessary when results appear. I have seen men undo their own progress by demanding proof too soon. Proof arrives in sequence, not on demand. Faith allows sequence to complete itself. Sequence never fails when uninterrupted. Interruption belongs to impatience. Impatience has lost its voice. From now on, rest will feel deeper because resistance has been removed. Resistance kept the mind alert even in sleep. Alertness drained renewal. Renewal now proceeds naturally. Natural renewal restores strength without awareness. This is the highest form of efficiency. Efficiency allows a man to give more without depletion. Giving without depletion is power. Power expressed calmly attracts trust, responsibility, and opportunity. Opportunity responds to steadiness. Steadiness now defines you. You are not becoming stronger through effort. You are allowing strength to remain. Remaining strength grows. Growth does not require supervision. It requires allowance. Allowance has been given. Remain now in this stillness. Let the mind rest where it no longer needs to work. The law is operating. It will continue to operate, and it will strengthen you quietly, faithfully, and without end. That moment you still replay was never meant to follow you this far. It lingered not because it defined you, but because it was never released at the right time. Tonight is not about reliving what went wrong. It's about loosening the grip those moments still have when the day goes quiet. Most people carry the past into sleep without realizing it. They close their eyes and reopen old scenes, old words, old outcomes, adding fresh emotion to events that already ended. The mind doesn't know they're over. It only knows what is repeated. Failure feels heavy because it has been rehearsed emotionally. Each replay strengthens the impression that it still matters, that it still has authority. But authority is never permanent. It exists only where attention continues to flow. As the body relaxes, the conscious guard lowers. This is when memories stop being analyzed and start being accepted. Whatever passes through now does not argue, it settles. And this is exactly where release becomes possible. You were not meant to drag yesterday into tomorrow. The mind was designed to learn, not to punish. Experience is meant to inform action, not imprison identity. But when regret is rehearsed, the lesson turns into a label. Most people try to let go during the day, then undo that work at night by replaying old mistakes with new emotion. This contradiction keeps the past alive long after it has lost relevance. Tonight, there is no contradiction. There is only one direction, forward, not by force, not by denial. By calmly removing the emotional charge that keeps old failures breathing, the mind does not release what it believes is still needed. It holds on to pain because it thinks pain provides protection. But protection based on the past becomes limitation in the present. As you rest, the mind becomes willing to update its instructions. It begins to recognize that the danger is no longer active, that the lesson has already been learned, that repetition is no longer required. You are not here to forget what happened. Forgetting is unnecessary. What you are doing is separating information from emotion. When emotion leaves, memory becomes neutral. Neutral memories do not interfere. Failure loses power when it is no longer felt. And feeling fades when attention is withdrawn without resistance. Resistance keeps the past alive. Calm redirection dissolves it. Think of how many decisions have been shaped by something that already ended. How many hesitations were born from moments that can no longer repeat unless you carry them forward. Tonight, you stop carrying them, not with effort, but with permission. The mind prefers relief. It is tired of defending against ghosts. When given the chance, it releases them willingly. Release is not dramatic. It is quiet. It feels like space returning. As these ideas repeat, the emotional charge begins to soften. The body lets go of tension it has been holding unconsciously. Breathing deepens. The nervous system stands down. This is not weakness. This is recalibration. A system correcting itself once the threat is no longer rehearsed. Old failures were never proof of inability. They were part of training. Training always comes before mastery, never after. But the mind forgets this when regret is allowed the final word at night. Identity is not built from events. It is built from conclusions drawn from those events. Tonight, the conclusion changes. The new conclusion is simple. The past has finished teaching. It has no further authority. Authority shifts the moment agreement shifts, and agreement made in rest becomes assumption carried into waking life. Most people underestimate how much power the final thoughts of the day carry. What you fall asleep agreeing with becomes tomorrow's expectation. Expectation shapes response long before logic enters. As the hours pass, the mind reorganizes. Old experiences are filed correctly, not as warnings, but as completed lessons. Completed lessons do not interrupt the present. This is how momentum returns quietly, not through motivation, through relief. You may notice that the urge to explain yourself fades. The need to justify disappears. When the past loosens its grip, the present no longer needs defense. Release does not erase memory. It removes its emotional volume. And once the volume lowers, the mind stops reacting to echoes. This is why rest is the most powerful place for release. The mind does not argue when it is calm. It accepts what feels settled and certain. Notice how calm carries authority. It does not persuade, it replaces. Most people cling to old failures because they believe letting go means repeating them. In truth, clinging is what keeps repetition alive. Release creates flexibility. Flexibility creates growth. You are not the sum of what went wrong. You are the result of what you learned and chose to continue. The past does not get to vote on your future unless you invite it. Tonight, the invitation is withdrawn. As these words continue, the mind begins to expect lightness instead of weight, space instead of tension, movement instead of replay. The subconscious follows expectation without question. When it no longer expects repetition, it stops preparing for it. This is how confidence returns naturally, not as bravado, but as steadiness, a quiet sense that you are no longer being pulled backward. You may not feel dramatic change when morning comes. That is how real release works without announcement. But you will notice what does not arise. The memory that once tightened your chest will feel distant. The thought that once stopped action will feel irrelevant. The old story will lose urgency. This is the sign that authority has shifted. Release is not something you do once. It is something that happens when repetition stops. And repetition stops when the mind is given something better to agree with. Tonight, that agreement is in place. Let the body sink deeper now. There is nothing to resolve, nothing to fix, nothing to revisit. The past has completed its role. And the mind, once freed from unnecessary rehearsal, is already turning toward what comes next. Rest here. Old failures are losing their power, not because they were fought, but because they were finally dismissed, and what no longer has emotional authority can no longer shape your future. I have observed, through more than a quarter century of study, that failure possesses no power of its own. It does not follow a man unless invited. It does not speak unless questioned. Its voice is borrowed, never original. Whatever authority failure seems to hold exists only because the mind continues to recognize it as a governing force long after its work is finished. Most men believe failure is something that happened to them. In truth, failure is something they continue to consult. They return to it for opinions. They ask it permission before acting. They allow it to sit in judgment over present effort, though it was never qualified to rule beyond the moment of instruction it delivered. Failure is not a permanent condition. It is a messenger. Once its message has been received, its purpose is fulfilled. Yet millions of men keep the messenger long after the letter has been read, studied, and understood. They do not dismiss it. They give it lodging in the mind, and there it speaks at night when reason sleeps. I have seen men of great ability rendered hesitant, not by lack of talent, but by loyalty to outdated conclusions. The past held their attention, not because it was accurate, but because it was familiar. The mind clings to what it has repeated, even when repetition no longer serves growth. The night hours are when this habit does its deepest work. When the body relaxes and the will loosens its grip, the mind resumes its favorite conversations. Old scenes replay, old words return. Old outcomes are felt again, not as memory, but as present experience. The mind does not know time. It knows only impression. Whatever is impressed repeatedly becomes accepted as truth. And whatever is accepted as truth begins to shape conduct without permission. This is how men come to live under the rule of events that have long since ended. They are not defeated by what occurred, but by what they allow to remain unresolved. I wish to make this clear. Failure does not bind a man. Agreement binds him. The moment a man withdraws emotional consent from an experience, that experience loses its authority. It becomes information only, and information does not command. It merely instructs. The successful men whom I have studied were not those who avoided failure, but those who completed their relationship with it. They took the lesson and dismissed the emotion. They did not carry regret as a companion. They did not rehearse defeat as a warning. They closed the matter and moved on. Others noticed this before they did. Men who had once been doubted began to appear steady. Their speech softened. Their movements slowed. They were no longer driven by the need to prove or explain. Confidence emerged not as display, but as calm presence. This calm was not practiced. It was the result of release. Failure loses power the moment it is no longer consulted. It fades when it is no longer questioned. It disappears when attention is withdrawn without argument. Resistance strengthens memory. Calm dismissal dissolves it. Many men attempt to overpower the past with force of will. They repeat declarations while still feeling the old weight. This effort only deepens the impression, for the mind accepts emotion more readily than words. The subconscious obeys feeling, not logic. It accepts what is felt as real. That is why release must occur without struggle. It must feel settled, not fought. The mind must be shown gently and repeatedly that the experience has completed its task. Only then does it stand down. I have watched men transform without outward effort once this understanding took root. They did not become louder. They became quieter. They did not argue their worth. They assumed it. And assumption, calmly held, is the strongest form of belief known to man. The mind is a court of law that never adjourns. Every night verdicts are either renewed or revised. Most men unknowingly renew the same judgment against themselves by replaying old evidence with fresh emotion. They sentence themselves again and again for crimes already paid for in full. But tonight, the court is quiet. There is no prosecution, no defense, only recognition that the case has been closed. What is closed no longer requires attention, and what no longer requires attention cannot interfere. I want you to understand that letting go is not forgetting. Forgetting is unnecessary. What matters is removing the emotional charge that keeps memory active. When emotion is withdrawn, memory becomes neutral. Neutral memories do not interrupt action. They wait, silent, until needed. This is how powerful men remember without hesitation. They recall facts, not feelings. They use experience as guidance, not as restraint. They are informed, not intimidated, by what once occurred. Repetition plays a role here, but not the repetition of pain. It is the repetition of a new conclusion. The mind must hear, gently and often, that the lesson is complete, that nothing further is required. That vigilance has served its purpose and may now rest. As these ideas are allowed to pass through the mind without resistance, something subtle begins to occur. The body releases tension it has been holding in obedience to old warnings. Breathing deepens. Muscles soften. The nervous system recognizes safety not through logic, but through calm certainty. This certainty does not announce itself. It replaces. It takes the place of vigilance. It removes the need to watch for what has already passed. In this space, energy returns. Attention becomes available again for creation instead of defense. Others will sense this before you speak of it. They will notice that you no longer react as you once did. Old remarks no longer strike the same nerve. Situations that once caused hesitation now receive measured response. This change will not require explanation. It will be accepted as natural authority. Affirm this quietly without strain. I have received the lesson. The past has finished teaching me. I carry forward understanding, not weight. What has ended no longer directs me. I am free to move without explanation. These are not wishes. They are statements of fact when calmly assumed. The mind accepts what is repeated without emotion as settled truth. Remember this always. Failure has no memory of you. It does not follow. It does not pursue. It waits only where attention continues to return. Withdraw attention, and it fades like a shadow at dusk. As you rest now, there is nothing to revisit, nothing to resolve, nothing to correct. The work of learning has been completed. What remains is permission to proceed. The mind prefers relief to vigilance. It is tired of guarding against what no longer exists. Given the opportunity, it releases old burdens willingly. Release is not dramatic. It feels like space returning where tension once lived. Stay with this understanding. Let it settle. Let it repeat quietly, not as effort, but as recognition. Old failures are losing their power now, not because they were defeated, but because they are no longer needed. And what is no longer needed cannot rule. There is a distinction few men ever learn to make, and yet upon it rests the difference between freedom and lifelong self-imprisonment. That distinction is the difference between instruction and punishment. Experience was never intended to wound a man repeatedly. Its sole purpose is to teach. Once the lesson has been learned, repetition ceases to be wisdom and becomes cruelty. The mind, when left without guidance, confuses familiarity with usefulness. It revisits old mistakes not because they are necessary, but because they are known. This habit disguises itself as caution. In truth, it is fear wearing the mask of responsibility. The mind believes pain is protection, and so it keeps pain alive. I have studied thousands of men who carried more intelligence than success, and nearly all shared this habit. They treated yesterday's lesson as though it were tomorrow's warning. They allowed memory to issue commands instead of counsel. In doing so, they surrendered initiative to experiences that had already served their purpose. Instruction is brief. Punishment is endless unless interrupted. Instruction says, here is what to do differently. Punishment says, remember what you are. One builds ability. The other erodes identity. The mind must be taught which voice to follow, for it will obey whichever is repeated most often. Men who rise above failure do not deny it. They refine it. They extract meaning and discard emotion. They keep the map and burn the chains. This is not denial. It is selection. The mind is capable of choosing which elements of experience it will retain, but only when that choice is made calmly. Punishment thrives on emotion. It requires feeling to survive. The moment feeling is removed, punishment collapses. This is why the night hours are so important. When the will relaxes, emotion either settles or intensifies. What is fed during this time becomes habit. Many men relive their failures at night, believing they are being thorough. They tell themselves they are being honest, or vigilant, or realistic. In truth, they are rehearsing limitation. The mind does not improve through accusation, it improves through direction. I have known men who failed publicly and yet carried no inward shame. Others failed quietly and never recovered. The difference was not in the event, but in the conclusion drawn from it. One man said, I learned. The other said, I am flawed. One moved forward. The other stood still. Others noticed this difference instinctively. They trusted the man who did not carry apology in his posture. They followed the one who did not explain himself excessively. Authority is not claimed. It is recognized. And recognition comes when a man is no longer at war with his own past. Instruction completes itself naturally. Once behavior changes, instruction has no further task. Punishment, however, demands rehearsal. It must be replayed to survive. It feeds on repetition, especially repetition charged with feeling. Remove the feeling, and repetition weakens. This is why the calm mind releases faster than the forceful one. Calm does not argue with memory, it replaces it. The mind accepts calm certainty as truth far more readily than emotional insistence. What is calmly assumed becomes settled. Allow this understanding to repeat gently now, not as a command, but as recognition. I have learned what I needed to learn. I no longer require the pain to remember the lesson. The lesson remains. The pain may go. These are not hopeful words. They are statements of order. The mind prefers order to chaos, completion to repetition. When shown that a matter is complete, it closes the file willingly. Men who master this skill appear disciplined to others. In truth, they are unburdened. They do not hesitate because they are not consulting ghosts. They do not procrastinate because their energy is not divided between past and present. They act with clarity because their attention is whole. Punishment creates inner noise. Instruction creates silence. Silence restores strength. Strength invites opportunity. This sequence is as exact as any law of nature, and it operates whether recognized or not. Repetition still has its place, but its purpose changes here. No longer is it used to engrave pain. It is used to settle truth. The same truth, stated quietly, night after night, becomes assumption. And assumption governs conduct more surely than effort. Notice how the body responds when punishment is withdrawn. The chest loosens, the jaw softens, the breath lengthens. These are not accidents. The body obeys the mind's signal that danger has passed. Others sense this signal without knowing why. They feel steadiness where tension once lived. They respond to certainty even when it is silent. This is why men who have released punishment often find doors opening without request. Affirm this now, without strain. I retain wisdom and release weight. I accept instruction and dismiss self-accusation. What I have learned strengthens me. What has finished teaching me no longer follows me. Let these thoughts repeat gently, like a steady current rather than a striking force. The subconscious does not need persuasion. It needs clarity. As this clarity settles, the mind stops scanning the past for threats. It turns naturally toward use and expression. Energy returns not because it was summoned, but because it was freed. This is how men regain momentum without excitement. They simply stop carrying what no longer belongs to them. They move forward lighter, quieter, and more certain. Instruction has done its work. Punishment is dismissed. The mind is free to rest now, knowing nothing has been ignored and nothing remains unresolved. And in this rest, the habit of freedom begins to take root. There is a reason the mind is most impressionable when the body rests, and it is not accidental. Nature arranged it so that the conscious guard, whose task is to argue and compare, loosens its hold at night. When this guard relaxes, the mind ceases to dispute and begins to accept. Whatever enters now is not debated, it is received. During waking hours, a man reasons with his thoughts. He challenges them, doubts them, explains them away. But when sleep approaches, reasoning retires and habit takes command. The mind becomes less concerned with proof and more concerned with agreement. This is the moment when conclusions are formed quietly and carried forward as assumptions. Most men misuse this hour without knowing it. They lie down and reopen unfinished conversations with themselves. They revisit moments that stir emotion. They relive outcomes that no longer exist. And because the conscious will is no longer present to object, the mind accepts these impressions as current truth. The subconscious does not measure time. It cannot distinguish between what happened and what is happening. It responds only to feeling and repetition. If a man feels regret as he rests, the subconscious assumes regret is required. It prepares the body and conduct accordingly. Thus, the past is projected forward without intention. I have found that men who master themselves do not fight this process. They guide it. They do not attempt to overpower memory with effort. They introduce new conclusions gently during the hours when the mind is most willing to receive them. In this way, change occurs without strain. It is important to understand that the subconscious is obedient, not intelligent. It does not judge whether a thought is useful. It accepts whatever is impressed upon it repeatedly, especially when accompanied by calm feeling. This is why fear impressed at night is so persistent, and why peace impressed at night is so powerful. When a man lies down with the quiet understanding that a matter is complete, the subconscious files it accordingly. Completion is a signal the mind understands instantly. It stops preparing for repetition. It ceases to rehearse defense. It allows attention to return to present opportunity. This is how old failures lose their authority without resistance. They are not argued against. They are outgrown. The mind does not cling to what it believes is finished. It clings only to what feels unresolved. Men often believe they must force themselves to let go. This belief itself creates strain. Letting go is not an act of will. It is an act of recognition. When the mind recognizes that an experience has nothing further to teach, it releases it naturally. as the hand releases an object no longer needed. I have observed that men who reach this state do not speak of their past with emotion. They recount facts without feeling. They recall events without reliving them. This is the mark of mastery. Emotion indicates unfinished business. Calm recollection indicates completion. Others notice this change quickly. They sense when a man is no longer governed by old conclusions. His decisions become simpler. His movements become deliberate. He does not hurry and he does not stall. He acts when action is required and rests when rest is proper. This balance comes from inner settlement. The night mind is the builder of habit. It assembles the material provided to it before sleep and constructs the framework through which tomorrow is lived. If the material is regret, tomorrow is cautious. If the material is fear, tomorrow is defensive. If the material is calm certainty, tomorrow is confident. This is why I say that the last thoughts of the day are more important than the first thoughts of the morning. What you agree with as you rest becomes the expectation you awaken with. Expectation governs reaction long before conscious choice appears. Many men chase confidence through effort, not realizing that confidence is the absence of inner contradiction. When the mind is no longer divided between past and present, it moves forward as one force. This unity is felt as certainty. Certainty does not shout. It does not need reinforcement from others. It exists quietly and steadily, and others recognize it without explanation. This is why men who have settled their inner accounts are often followed, even when they do not seek attention. The subconscious accepts images more readily than arguments. It responds to impressions, not explanations. Therefore, it is useful to allow the mind to picture the past as closed, complete, and distant, not erased, but placed properly. The mind understands placement. Picture a book whose final page has been turned. The story remains, but it no longer demands attention. The reader moves on. The book does not follow him. This is how experience was meant to function. The danger lies not in remembering, but in reopening. Each emotional replay convinces the subconscious that the event is still active. It prepares the body for defense against a threat that no longer exists. This preparation drains vitality and clouds judgment. Men who appear tireless are often not stronger than others. They are simply not exhausted by unnecessary vigilance. Their energy is not divided. They are not guarding against ghosts. Their strength is the result of attention fully available for use. The mind resists nothing so strongly as confusion. When it is given a clear conclusion, it obeys gladly. Tell it gently, night after night, that the lesson is complete, that nothing further is required, that vigilance may rest. In time, this becomes accepted fact. Affirm this quietly now, without urgency. The lesson is learned and complete. I allow the past to rest where it belongs. My mind is free to prepare for what is now required. I awaken with clarity and calm. These are not promises. They are statements of present condition when calmly assumed. The subconscious accepts them because they contain no conflict. As these thoughts repeat, you may notice the body responding. The breath deepens, the shoulders settle, the eyes grow heavy. These are signs that the mind has received the signal of safety. Safety allows rest. Rest allows reorganization. During sleep, the mind arranges experience into usable order. It discards what is no longer necessary and strengthens what supports progress. This process works best when not interrupted by emotional disturbance. Many men believe they must solve their problems before sleep. In truth, they must only place them correctly. A problem placed in its proper category loses urgency. What is urgent cannot rest. What is complete can. I have seen men awaken after such nights with renewed decisiveness. They did not feel excited. They felt clear. Clarity is superior to enthusiasm. Enthusiasm burns quickly. Clarity endures. Others responded to them differently. Conversations shortened. Doubtful glances disappeared. Requests were met with confidence. This change did not come from outward behavior. It came from inner settlement. When the mind no longer argues with itself, It speaks with authority even in silence. This authority is not assumed, it is felt. The night mind does not ask for proof, it asks for consistency. Whatever is repeated calmly becomes truth to it. Therefore, repeat only what you wish to live by. Withdraw repetition from what no longer serves. This is not denial, it is direction. The mind must be directed gently, not forced. Force creates resistance. Resistance strengthens what it opposes. Calm guidance dissolves it. As you continue to rest, allow this understanding to settle without effort. There is nothing to achieve here, only something to accept. Acceptance is the highest form of control. The past has finished teaching. The future does not require defense.